Chapter 930. Meeting Zheng Mingxing was just a small event in his life. It didn't affect Poplar Fruit much. Of course, to prevent his girlfriend from thinking too much, Poplar Fruit didn't mention Zheng Yujia's father to her. The next day, Poplar Fruit drove Kiki home. Fortunately, they returned home more than a week early. Poplar Fruit didn't catch the peak period of a spring festival. The traffic was smooth. After not returning home for half a year, the small village in his hometown had changed a lot. Because the Yang family's business was booming, it spurred the desire of the people in the village to get rich. Many people started businesses. Even if they didn't do business themselves, they worked in Poplar Fruit's factory. The treatment was much better than before. In November last year, Poplar Fruit donated a sum of money. In addition to the joint venture of the villagers, all the mud roads in the village were renovated. Every house had a hard cement road in front of it. The bad road conditions that were dusty on a sunny day and muddy on a rainy day were no longer found in the village. Poplar Fruit's family also bought a house next to it. They expanded the yard and renovated the small bungalow to make it more beautiful and comfortable. The reason why they expanded the yard was that in addition to Poplar Fruit's Land Rover and Yang Chengwan's Jeep, his father Yang Tai also changed his gun and drove a Volkswagen Passat. Two of the three cars were muscle cars. The yard wasn't big enough to park all of them. Originally, Poplar Fruit wanted his father to drive a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, but it couldn't be helped. The people from his father's era liked this brand of car. On the day that Poplar Fruit returned, Yang Ping and Yang Chengwan also went home to visit their brother. The two of them were now quite famous in this small county. Although they weren't ranked in the county and were at most considered township entrepreneurs, they were considered important because of their relationship with Secretary Chen Longjiang. Their family business was developing well. In addition to the shop at the station, they also opened a branch at the pier station. But in reality, the offline sales were just a drizzle. Their online store sales were booming, and they had even entered Tmall to promote their own island and Guangdong province specialty brands. In the second half of last year, our turnover exceeded 5 million. Yang Chengwan said to Poplar Fruit with a glowing face. Yang nodded. He didn't know much about business, but he still gave his sister and brother-in-law a suggestion. Since we've already earned so much, we can consider stabilizing our scale first. Don't continue to expand our factory. If we expand too quickly, our foundation won't be stable. It's possible that we'll collapse. That's what Secretary Chen said. Yang Ping said with a smile. Poplar Fruit, don't worry. We know what to do. When Chen Longjiang was mentioned, Poplar Fruit found out that he was also about to be promoted. There were rumors that Chen Longjiang would be promoted to deputy mayor of the neighboring city in March or April. Yang Chengwan told Poplar Fruit Secretary Chen didn't deny this statement. Ignoring the impact of Chen Longjiang's promotion on Yanggua's family's business, Yanggua felt that Chen Longjiang's promotion speed was quite astonishing, even though he had only been in her hometown for a few years. Although Chen Longjiang's own background had a great impact on his promotion was well-deserved. In the past few years, Poplar Fruit's small county town had undergone earth-shattering changes. Poplar Fruit decided to visit Chen Longjiang in 2 days. Although he was Chen Longjiang's benefactor, this debt of gratitude had been repaid long ago. However, Chen Longjiang was still so dedicated to his family. Poplar Fruit wouldn't be justified if he didn't visit to thank him and congratulate him. Don't talk about Secretary Chen. Talk about yourself, Yang Ping said with a smile. Didn't you say you were bringing your girlfriend home? Where's your girlfriend? My girlfriend is still at my girlfriend's mother's place, Poplar Fruit said with a mischievous smile. Okay, Poplar Fruit, after being away for a few years, you've learned how to play tricks with your sister, haven't you? Yang Ping rolled up her sleeves and was ready to torture Poplar Fruit. It's no use hiding it from us. We all know from the newspapers and TV that my daughter's friend is called Fong Bei Bei. What are you doing? Su Jinfeng brought the two kids back. Kiki and Yang Linjia were jumping around, chasing each other, and having a great time. Su Jinfeng said to Yang Ping, your brother said that he would bring her back on the 3rd or 4th day of Chinese New Year. Her parents couldn't bear to let her go during Chinese New Year. I saw on the news that you met her parents? Yang Ping asked curiously. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. How was it? Did they agree to you two being together? Yang Ping asked. Is there need to ask? If they didn't agree, how could he bring her back? Yang Chengwan pointed out his wife's logic error. As a result, she pinched his waist, causing him to grimace in pain. I'm asking, how's their attitude towards you? Yang Ping asked. Not bad. Poplar Fruit evaded the question and smiled. Before I came back, Beibei's mother said that after the Chinese New Year, we should arrange a time for the two families to sit down and talk. Wow, it seems that they're going to talk about marriage. Yang Ping exclaimed excitedly. Su Jinfeng was also sitting by the side, listening with a smile. That's nothing. Yang Chengwan snorted and said, Our Poplar Fruit is so outstanding. He's tall and handsome, talented, and can make money. He's also such a big celebrity. Of course, her family would be nervous. Don't say that. Poplar Fruit shook his hand with a smile and said, Beibei's family is quite well off. They don't care about me. Most importantly, Beibei and I really want to be together. Yang Ping still wanted to say something, but she was quickly interrupted by Kiki, who squeezed over. After returning to their hometown and the weather was not so cold, the little girl became very lively again. She threw herself into her father's arms and giggled, but tried hard to suppress her voice. Kiki, what's wrong with you? Poplar Fruit smiled and touched Kiki's little head and asked. Kiki is playing hide-and-seek with Brother Jia. Kiki lowered her voice, but everyone heard it clearly. Then why don't you go and hide? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki wants to hide behind Papa. Kiki giggled and was pulled by her father to the small gap behind Poplar Fruit's chair and squatted down. However, she was still worried and cried with a childish voice. Kiki is hiding here. Don't tell Brother Jia. Okay, we won't tell, Yang Ping said with a smile. After a while, Yang Lingjia found them. He shook his head and looked around as he walked. Yang Lingjia walked to the front of the adults, scratched his head, and asked, Uncle, have you seen Kiki? Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile and said, No, I haven't seen her. He heard Kiki's nervous breathing. Poplar Fruit had an idea and smiled wickedly. He gave Yang Lingjia a thumbs up and then pointed behind him. Wow, Kiki, you are here. I caught you. Yang Lingjia, who got the hint, jumped behind Poplar Fruit and said with a smile, Kiki screamed. Chapter 9:31. After returning home, Poplar Fruit spent most of his time with his parents. However, ever since he came back, the Yang family hadn't been peaceful. Except for a few families who were on bad terms with each other, almost everyone in the village came to Poplar Fruit's house to chat and watch Poplar Fruit. They didn't know the supermodels from Bali Fashion Week, but they knew the news. The news of Poplar Fruit receiving an award in Sweden with Mr. Mo. Yin had been on TV for the last month. Everyone in the village knew that the Yang family had an amazing person. Kiki was the happiest one, because her friends often came to play with her, and Yang Lingjia. Playing hide-and-seek with two people was the most boring. It was more fun when there were many people playing together. Kiki didn't know the rules of hide-and-seek with many people. Kiki often exposed her whereabouts because her grandmother was guarding nearby. However, Kiki never realized the problem. She always played with her friends until she was too excited during the day and went to bed early at night. After visiting Chunlongjiang, Poplar Fruit began counting his fingers, waiting for the new year. After New Year's Eve, Poplar Fruit began counting his fingers again, waiting for the day when he could take his girlfriend home. On New Year's Eve, many villagers came to visit, but the Yang family was indeed much quieter. Yang Ping and Yang Chengwan took Yang Lingjia back to their hometown for the new year. Without Yang Lingjia to play with, even Kiki couldn't bring herself to play. Although it was lively to pay respects to the ancestors and set off firecrackers, that wasn't what Kiki liked. Therefore, after dinner, the little girl asked her father to take a shower, then fell asleep while listening to a story. At that time, Poplar Fruit's busy life had just begun. He planned to watch the New Year's Eve with his parents, but he didn't stop receiving calls and texts. Therefore, he was sent to the dining room by Su Jinfeng to return calls and texts. Don't make noise here. I'm watching a skit. If you can't even hear what others are saying, then what are you looking at? Most of the people who sent the messages to Yangwo were either students from the school or from the training classes. Judging from the format of their messages, it was very likely that they were all sent to a group. 9 prefectures fortune tiger roar, 8 directions happy travel, 7 colors good life, 6 straight wins in everything, 5 blessings family happiness, 4 seasons peace, 3 stars good luck, 2 eyes reflecting auspicious clouds, a New Year's greeting, all good luck to you. Regarding these group messages, Yang will also compose a short message and send it back to the group. Poplar Fruit was constantly interrupted by phone calls. Needless to say, Fong Bei and Fong Bei could talk for a day and a night on the phone. Fortunately, Fong Bei knew that Poplar Fruit was busy at the moment, so she smiled and said Happy New Year to Poplar Fruit before letting him go. Just as he put down the phone, Che and Juan called. This guy had taken on a popular series and could now be considered a second or third-tier celebrity. However, he was a good person and didn't forget his original intentions. He kept in touch with Poplar Fruit, but he didn't come back for the new year. Beijing had almost become his new hometown. Poplar Fruit originally planned to call Big Brother to wish him a happy new year, but he didn't expect that his calls would be so frequent. In the end, it was Big Brother who called him. Poplar Fruit, did you come home for the new year? If you're in Yangcheng, come over to Big Brother's place for dinner. He Wenjua's side was very noisy. It seemed that his sister-in-law Ji Xiaoyan and his son were watching the New Year's Eve. Big Brother, you're back? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I'm at home. We're after the new year. Let's get together after the new year. I haven't seen you for half a year. Poplar Fruit knew that Big Brother, he had been in another military area for the past 2 months, and he didn't go online. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Poplar Fruit be bullied by others. Although he couldn't do anything about those online ghostwriters. Poplar Fruit, remember to bring your girlfriend over for sister-in-law to check. Ji Xiaoyan snatched the phone and said to Poplar Fruit with a smile. No problem. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Kid, you should be doing well now. I heard from your sister-in-law that you've become a big star. He Wenjua took the phone and said to Poplar Fruit with a smile. How am I a big star? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Big Brother, you know what kind of character I am. That's all because of other people's support. It doesn't count. I'm still a simple scholar. Not bad, not bad. That's how it should be. He Wenjua said with satisfaction, Don't worry. If someone bullies you in the future, you can come to our army. I'll see who dares to come to the army to deal with you. After chatting with his big brother for a while, Poplar Fruit hung up the phone. There was a long list of people on his New Year's greeting list. Zhang Yujia and Song Jiwen had already called in advance to wish them a new year during the day. Duan Shiweqing had also picked up his phone, but Duan Shiweqing was still cold and indifferent. Poplar Fruit wasn't sure if she had walked out of that shadow. His teachers, Chun Zongdai, Mo Yin, Xiong Kahu, and Poplar Fruit had all called them to wish them a new year. Even Professor Luo Lin, who was both a teacher and a friend, and Poplar Fruit, who had helped him many times, had called to wish them a new year. Of course, Yao Dahua, who had helped Poplar Fruit a lot, was also on Poplar Fruit's list. However, because they often contacted each other, they didn't talk for too long. Uncle Jean, who had been helping with the evaluation of Poplar Fruit's awards, had also called Poplar Fruit to wish him a new year. Uncle Jean and Poplar Fruit were more like friends. He laughed and said, You don't have to say thank you. When you have time, come back to the community and play a few games with me. That's enough. However, Uncle Jean had obviously underestimated Poplar Fruit. When Uncle Jin's kung fu hadn't been great, Poplar Fruit had been able to beat Uncle Jean without any resistance. How could Uncle Jean be a match for the current Poplar Fruit? What surprised Poplar Fruit was that when it was almost 10 o'clock, he received a call from a good friend that he hadn't contacted for a long time. Guan Yinjia. 2 years ago, when he was translating the biography of Steve Jobs, this guy was Poplar Fruit's right-hand man. Moreover, Poplar Fruit had a very good impression of him. However, after the translation, he said that he had to go back to Australia to study for a master's degree in management. After that, except for a few words on QQ, they had almost lost contact. This time, he could finally return to China for the new year. He took the initiative to call Poplar Fruit and congratulated Poplar Fruit on his brilliant achievements. No matter what, Poplar Fruit was still very happy to be able to contact an old friend. Guan Yinjie still had half a year to go before he graduated from the Australian university. He smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "Captain, when I graduate, I'll come and join you. Don't mind me." How could Poplar Fruit dislike him? Regardless of how Guan Yinjie's management studies were, this guy's translation skills were still pretty good. Who knew? He might even become a member of Xinda Translation or New Translation Road Publishing House in the future. Compared to last year's New Year, Poplar Fruit had already improved quite a bit. At the very least, he had started to understand how to manage his own social network. It wasn't necessarily for the sake of using it in the future. Poplar Fruit wasn't that utilitarian, but he had already realized that the saying, "a true good friend doesn't need to keep in touch," was actually a ridiculous saying. Chapter 932. Sitting in the car, Fong Bei was so nervous that her forehead was sweating, but she still pretended to be calm and asked, "Why didn't you bring Kiki here?" Poplar Fruit was driving, thinking about how he had just snatched his girlfriend from Fong Chio's parents, who were eyeing him covetously, and how Fong Chio's parents wanted to swallow Poplar Fruit. He was still a little nervous. "It's a few hours' drive." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "She's having a lot of fun at home, so I didn't take her back and forth. You didn't have to pick me up." Fong Bei's palms were sweating. She took 2 pieces of tissue to wipe them and said, "I can take the train there myself." Poplar Fruit turned to look at Fong Bei and said with a smile, "How could I let you come here alone on your first visit? Even if we don't talk about face, how could I rest assured that you would take the train from thousands of miles away during the Spring Festival alone? Did your parents say anything when you came home?" Fong Bei frowned and asked worriedly, "Would they have any opinions about me?" In the previous reports, Fong Bei couldn't continue. She was referring to the time when she was deceived by Gan Junji last year. Those reports had almost criticized her as a hypocritical and slutty woman. Even though almost 2 months had passed and Gan Junji didn't have a good ending, Fong Bei felt that God was watching her. But when Fong Bei thought about it, she still felt uncomfortable and terrified. Skilled people were bold. Poplar Fruit's left hand was on the steering wheel, and his right hand was holding Fong Bei's hand. He gently rubbed it and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I explained it to them a long time ago. It's not your fault. My parents are reasonable people. They have been looking forward to your visit for a long time. How could they not like you? Besides, I'm here, aren't I?" Poplar Fruit smiled warmly at her, then glanced at Fong Bei's dress and said with a smile, "You're dressed so beautifully today. You have to be confident in yourself." Fong Bei had specially dressed up today. She wore a floral print chiffon dress, which had a snow-white base and a lovely ink lotus print on the hem, which looked fresh and beautiful. She wanted to make herself look less student-like and more compatible with Poplar Fruit. She even wanted to put on makeup. Poplar Fruit naturally didn't want his girlfriend's smooth and delicate skin to be ruined by those cosmetics. He warned her that the cosmetics might backfire, and Fong Bei then gave up the idea. People might think that wearing a dress in the winter was she too to look. It wouldn't be good if she caught a cold because she wanted to look good. Poplar Fruit didn't think much of it. First of all, Fong Bei was wearing bottoms and a long windbreaker. Second of all, it was already February, and the winter in Nangul wasn't too cold. Poplar Fruit's hometown was even warmer during the day. There was air conditioning at home at night. Su Jinfeng had renovated Poplar Fruit's room like a new house. There were brand new appliances, and even the bed was exaggeratedly red. As for the journey, Poplar Fruit also turned on the heater in the car, so that Fong Bei wouldn't catch a cold. Although Poplar Fruit left early in the morning, the journey took more than 10 hours. By the time he arrived home with Fong Bei, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. However, the Yang family wasn't deserted at all. When Poplar Fruit drove the car to the door, he was shocked. Why are there so many people? The courtyard was crowded with people. Big ants, second ants, and little ants were all here. Poplar Fruit saw his sister and brother-in-law greeting people. Even Fat Dragon, a relative, was happily squeezing his fat belly in the courtyard. Kiki, Yang Linjie, and a group of children were screaming as they shuttled through the crowd. Seeing Poplar Fruit's car, Yang Ping waved her hand and smiled. Drive the car to Second Master's house. Poplar Fruit. Fong Beibei nervously turned to look at Poplar Fruit and said weakly, when had she ever seen such a scene? At first, she was so nervous just thinking about meeting Poplar Fruit's parents. Now, she actually had to face the scrutiny of so many relatives of Poplar Fruit. If they weren't already here, Fong Beibei would have run away in fear. I didn't know there were so many people here. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and shook his head. He drove the car to Second Master's house next door and then went to Fong Beibei's side. He held Fong Beibei's hand and comforted her. It's okay. Stay by my side. I'm here. Running away wouldn't solve the problem. Fong Beibei gathered her courage and got out of the car. This is Beibei, right? She's so beautiful. Yang Ping followed. She couldn't wait any longer. She smiled and looked at Fong Beibei. This is my sister, my biological sister, Yang Ping. Poplar Fruit smiled and introduced her to them. You guys chat first. There's something in the trunk to take. Call me Sister Ping. Yang Ping smiled. She could see Fong Beibei's shyness. She took the initiative to step forward and held Fong Beibei's hand. We're in the countryside. The conditions here might not be as good as those in Yangcheng. Don't mind. No way, no way. Fong Beibei felt Yang Ping's warmth and kindness. She felt a little relieved. She said, Hello, Sister Ping. It's my first time here. If there's anything wrong, just tell me. There's nothing wrong. Our whole family is very happy that you're here. Yang Ping smiled. Poplar Fruit rarely brings girls home. My mother is worried sick about him. In the trunk, Father Fong and Mother Fong put 2 jars of wild honey and a box of imported wine. The 5-bottle box of imported wine was worth more than 10,000 yuan. They felt that they shouldn't be too shabby since it was their first visit. They wanted to ask Fong Beibei to bring 2 more cartons of good cigarettes. However, Poplar Fruit persuaded them to go back with the reason that his father had just quit smoking. Baby, you carry this. Poplar Fruit passed the beautifully packaged honey bag to Fong Beibei. Then, he carried the box of imported wine. Yang Ping smiled. She didn't even want to help. After all, it wasn't good to come empty-handed on their first visit. It was also because of this that Poplar Fruit passed the lighter bag to Fong Beibei. Otherwise, he could easily handle it alone. They're here. Fat Dragon stood at the door. When he saw Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei appear, he quickly shouted toward them. He was speaking the dialect of Poplar Fruit's hometown. Fong Beibei couldn't understand it. However, his shout was like poking a beehive. Everyone stood up and greeted them with smiles. Poplar Fruit's wine was taken by Yang Chengwan. He freed his hands and held Fong Beibei's waist with one hand to give her courage. His other hand was busy pointing at people and introducing them to Fong Beibei. Baby, this is my father, and this is my mother. Uncle Aunt. Fong Beibei blushed. She bowed and greeted Poplar Fruit's parents. Good, good. Su Jinfeng's face was red. She held Fong Beibei's hands and couldn't help but say. Poplar Fruit could hear the surrounding relatives exclaiming in admiration. This girl is beautiful. Poplar Fruit has good taste. Fortunately, everyone was speaking in a dialect. Otherwise, who knew how shy the little girl would be? Chapter 9:33. Look at the bride. Look at the bride. Childish shouts could be heard. The crowd was divided by a group of children. Yang Linjia, the devil, led a group of children and broke through the crowd, shouting and squeezing in. Kiki, who was here to join the fun, also giggled and shouted with them. They lined up in a line from tall to short. Kiki stood in the middle and put her hands on each other's shoulders. Oh, Sister Beibei. Kiki did not see it because there were adults in front of her. Now that she came in, she saw it and shouted excitedly. The little girl smiled so widely that her eyes turned into crescents. Ignoring Yang Linjia's exasperated yell of pay attention to the formation, Chi-Chi broke away from the group and pounced towards Fong Beibei. Looking at her overjoyed appearance, it was as if she was a child who had waited a long time for her mother to come home. Fong Beibei hugged the little girl in a hurry. Seeing the second acquaintance besides Poplar Fruit, Fong Bei was also very happy. When she picked up Kiki, she did not notice that the little girl's shoes almost stepped on her white dress. Poplar Fruit quickly held Kiki's feet and took off her shoes, but it was too late. Although she did not step on Kiki's feet, she still drew a gray mark. Moreover, even if Kiki took off her shoes, her little feet were still black. Poplar Fruit did not think of this, so Kiki stepped on Fong Bei's dress again, the 5 black spots. It was cute, but the dress that Fong Bei had carefully picked out had become dirty. Poplar Fruit tried to pat Fong Bei, but he could not pat it with his hands. Oh! Papa grabbed Kiki's feet. Kiki twisted her feet and complained to Fong Bei. "It's itchy. It's okay." Fong Bei whispered to Poplar Fruit, "You can wash it later." Fong Bei whispered to Poplar Fruit. Others did not hear it, but Su Jinfeng, who was standing in front of them, heard it clearly. In addition, Kiki did not hide her joy when she saw Fong Bei, so Su Jinfeng was very satisfied with Fong Bei in her heart. At least, this child has a good heart. Although she is very beautiful, she is not pretentious. She treats Kiki sincerely. Kiki did not stick to Fong Bei. After she returned to her hometown, she could not sit still. Under the call of her friends, Kiki struggled to sit down, let her father put on her small shoes, and ran to play happily. Fong Bei continued to follow Poplar Fruit to greet all the relatives and neighbors in the yard one by one. There were too many people, and even Fong Bei, who was very smart, was confused. In the end, she could only stand beside Poplar Fruit and say shyly, "Hello." She could not remember who was who at all. Poplar Fruit felt that his girlfriend was tired, so he sped up. Finally, after meeting all the relatives, Poplar Fruit took his girlfriend into the house to rest. He brought Fong Bei back to meet his family, not to let her be surrounded by people like a panda. After saying goodbye to his mother, Poplar Fruit took Fong Bei upstairs to their room. "Don't be so formal. Treat this as our home," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He pulled Fong Bei, who did not know what to do, to sit down on the bed. "And this is my room. Why are you being so formal with me?" Fong Bei blushed and said, "I saw too many people just now. I can't remember their names. My head is dizzy." Poplar Fruit also sat down beside her, holding Fong Bei's shoulder. His left hand gently brushed her sweat-dampened bangs on her forehead and said with concern, "I didn't expect so many people to come today. I guess my mother's big mouth spread the news everywhere." "Don't talk about Annie like that," Fong Bei said. "Huh?" Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "I think you can call them Mom and Dad. You don't have to be so distant. Maybe you'll be happier if you call them Mom and Dad." Fong Bei pushed Poplar Fruit, glanced at him gently, and said angrily, "How can you say Mom and Dad when you come to the door? I haven't married you yet, and I don't see you call me Mom and Dad like that." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "If I dare to call you that, your parents will kill me." Looking at the tiredness in Fong Bei's eyes, Poplar Fruit hugged Fong Bei and let her lie down with her head on his lap. He stretched out his hands to her temples and said with a smile, "Take a rest. I'll give you a massage." Fong Bei obediently closed her eyes. Poplar Fruit's massage was very good. She felt that her temples were warm and very comfortable. She suddenly opened her eyes and sat up. She asked Poplar Fruit nervously, "Uncle, how was my performance just now? Was I too nervous?" There were so many questions that I didn't answer Annie's questions. "Will this leave a bad impression on your mom?" Fong Bei was anxious and flustered. Looking at her expression, she was about to cry. Poplar Fruit smiled and rubbed her head, saying, "Don't worry, you did very well. According to my understanding of my mom, she couldn't wait to like you. How could she have a bad impression of you?" "Really?" Fong Bei asked happily. "Really?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Do you remember that in the middle, she rushed everyone and said, 'Okay, don't crowd around, don't scare the girl'?" Fong Bei thought for a moment, then shook her head in confusion. "I forgot, you don't understand our dialect." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "But at that time she did say that. If my mom didn't like you, why would she care so much about you?" Fong Bei was happy for a while, and her mental state was much better. She pulled Poplar Fruit's arm and asked, "Should we go down? It's not good to keep hiding up there. Also, we should help Annie work. You haven't even married into the family, and you're already so active." Poplar Fruit pinched Fong Beibei's nose and joked, "Isn't it good to be more active?" Fong Beibei pouted and asked, "Good? Of course it's good." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "But you don't have to work hard today. Didn't you see that even I, the chef, don't have to work?" "Don't worry, it's my sister who's cooking." "Then we should also go down. The guests are downstairs." Fong Beibei stood up, pulled Poplar Fruit's arm, and said, "Don't you want to rest?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "No need." Fong Beibei shook her head and said, "I'm not tired." "Okay." Poplar Fruit stood up, interlocked fingers with Fong Beibei, and went downstairs. "Uncle, you have to teach me your dialect." Fong Beibei said, "I don't understand what you're talking about." "Learn? It's not easy for you. Or do you want me to translate for you? Are you going to question the ability of a professional translator?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Fong Beibei had such a hard time learning English. It can be seen how bad her language talent was. "No, I want to learn." Fong Beibei shook Poplar Fruit's arm and said with a firm tone. Chapter 9:34. After a lively night, the relatives left one after another. However, almost everyone praised Fong Beibei when they left. Even the old and inarticulate great-grandmother gave Fong Beibei a thumbs up. The smile on Su Jinfeng's face did not stop for the whole night. She was different from the silent Yang Tai. She paid attention to Fong Beibei's every move the whole night. Whether it was when they were chatting, Fong Beibei's bashful, sitting posture, generous answers, and occasionally getting up to change the water to make tea, or when they were eating, she helped to carry the dishes, helped to move Yang Lingjia's favorite dishes in front of him, and rushed to wash the dishes after dinner. Su Jinfeng took in every little detail. From these little details, Su Jinfeng could feel that Fong Beibei had a good upbringing and a virtuous personality. Not to mention her ability, such a girl was the best choice for her to choose a wife. Although Su Jinfeng had been troubled by Poplar Fruit suddenly becoming an unmarried father, she had been worrying about how to find a woman who was willing to marry Poplar Fruit to settle down with Poplar Fruit. Her standards had long been lowered. However, how could she not have any expectations in her heart? She hoped that her son could find a suitable wife and not just make do. "She's better than the girl who came to our house last time." Su Jinfeng was very satisfied. She thought, although the one who came to our house last time was also very beautiful and easy to give birth to, her character was a little strong and her family background was much better. "I'm afraid there will be conflicts in the future. This Fong Beibei is still better. She's gentle and obedient." Fat Dragon was also about to leave. He held his wife's hand, and the two of them walked in front of Poplar Fruit. He winked and whispered to Poplar Fruit in his hometown dialect. "Poplar Fruit, not bad, not bad. I finally understand why you chose her in the end." Fat Dragon's words had a hidden meaning. More than half a year ago, he thought that Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujia had an affair in Xiong Village, but he did not like Zheng Yujia very much. He had no choice. She was too domineering towards him. As for Zheng Yujia, Fat Dragon felt that she was not a good match for Poplar Fruit. As for Fong Beibei, Fat Dragon also felt that she was not a good match for Poplar Fruit. After all, he was also a little affected by the public opinion on the internet. The saying, "Three men make a tiger," was not groundless. Later, he helped Poplar Fruit deal with Gan Juanji. Although Gan Juanji's death was unclear, Fat Dragon firmly believed that Poplar Fruit must have done something in the afternoon. In his heart, Fat Dragon always felt that Poplar Fruit was not worth the risk for such a woman. But now, it seemed that he was biased. The girl that Poplar Fruit chose was beautiful and virtuous. Just like his wife, Fat Dragon was narcissistic. That was why the scene just now happened. Poplar Fruit, was speechless. Fortunately, Fong Beibei did not understand. He waved his hand and drove Fat Dragon away. "Okay, you go back early. It's too late to drive. We'll contact each other later. We still have work after the new year." After Fat Dragon left, Fong Beibei asked Poplar Fruit like a curious baby, "Uncle, what did he say?" "Nothing. He just said that you are beautiful. Poplar Fruit laughed. He has said this countless times today. Fong Beibei blushed and laughed. Finally, the guests left. Yang Ping and Yang Chongwan did not go back to the county that day. They stayed at home, but they also took Yang Linjia upstairs to take a shower. It was past 8 o'clock, which was not early in the countryside. Su Jinfeng had just taken Kiki to take a shower. She just came out. She hugged Kiki and asked, "Little Fong, are you tired? The conditions in the countryside are tough, but the people are still very warm. Are you not used to it?" "No, Auntie." Fong Beibei bent down slightly and smiled. "I'm used to it. During the day, we cleaned up the room next to Poplar Fruit. There are no furniture, but there are air conditioners. Don't mind." Su Jinfeng smiled. "Tomorrow, I will ask Poplar Fruit to go to the county to buy you a big TV." Oh, Poplar Fruit forgot to tell his mother about this. He smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry. She will sleep at my place tonight." Su Jinfeng was stunned. She did not expect Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei to progress so quickly. Didn't Poplar Fruit say that they had only been together for half a year? The older generation could not react. She looked at Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei's face was so red that even her ears were dyed red. She nodded embarrassedly and said, "Yes, but I still have to thank Auntie." This was a good thing. Unlike Father and Mother Fong's reaction, Su Jinfeng's face was like a blooming flower. What was wrong with this? It was her son who took advantage of Fong Beibei's eldest daughter. Very good, very good. Su Jinfeng was still thinking about whether she should say a few words to Poplar Fruit later and tell him to seize the opportunity and not let go of such a good girl. Now it seemed that she did not need to worry about it. Su Jinfeng's heart was blooming with joy. Poplar Fruit rarely took the initiative, and he took down Fong Beibei's daughter so quickly. "Papa hug." Kiki was a little sleepy. She rubbed her eyes and habitually stretched out her hands, wanting her father to hug her. It was more comfortable to sleep in her father's arms. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said, "Dad hasn't taken a bath yet. He stinks. Kiki, let Grandma hug you." "Let me do it." Fong Beibei stretched out her hands. Although she had always wanted to help, Yang Ping had blocked her, so she was still clean. Being held in the arms of Sister Beibei, Kiki pouted, but she did not make a fuss. She turned her head and looked around the lobby on the first floor and asked doubtfully, "Where is Brother Jia?" Brother Jia went to sleep. He is also sleepy. You can find him tomorrow. Let's go upstairs. Poplar Fruit turned his head and said to his mother, "Mom, let's go upstairs. Go upstairs and rest early." Su Jinfeng said with a smile. Fong Beibei could feel that Poplar Fruit's mother was implying something, and she also wanted to know the reason. However, she could not explain it, so she had to secretly pinch Poplar Fruit's waist when they went upstairs. "What's wrong?" Poplar Fruit turned his head and asked in confusion. Back in the room, he put Kiki on the big bed and let her play by herself. Fong Beibei pouted and said, "Your mother misunderstood." "What misunderstanding?" Poplar Fruit winked and smiled. "It's okay. Anyway, it's not far away, right?" Fong Beibei blushed, turned her head, pretended to be cold and snorted, and said, "Not at all." Poplar Fruit moved closer, put his hands on Fong Beibei's waist, and gently stroked it up and down. Under the dress, Fong Beibei's waist was thin and soft like a water snake. He put his ear close to Fong Beibei's ear and whispered softly, "Then, what if I can't hold it in anymore? Do you want to die?" Kiki is still awake. Fong Beibei's ears were red. She pressed down Poplar Fruit's hand that was slowly moving up and slapped it. She turned around, bit her lower lip, looked up at Poplar Fruit, and said, "If you can't hold it in, go to the toilet and do it yourself." Chapter 9:35. In Poplar Fruit's hometown, Poplar Fruit spent their first Valentine's Day together with her. Poplar Fruit brought Fong Beibei to his favorite cliff. The two of them didn't make solemn vows of love. They just hugged each other affectionately and looked at the sea for the whole morning. Although the winter sea breeze was still a little cold, Fong Beibei felt warm in Yang Guo's arms with a wreath made of light yellow wildflowers. She wanted to stay like this forever. However, Fong Beibei couldn't stay at Poplar Fruit's house for a few more days. Poplar Fruit had to bring her back to school by the 7th day of the Chinese New Year. University started earlier. Fong Beibei still had to register. Unlike Poplar Fruit, she didn't have to follow the school's basic student management system. However, Poplar Fruit had to go back early. He had 2 public elective courses to open next semester. He had to go back and select the students. Moreover, he also wanted to summon Fat Dragon and Kai Si-min and ask them to bring people to lead Dong County to install remote education equipment for the children in 16 poor mountain villages. Uncle, do you think I should choose your public elective course? Fong Beibei stood behind Poplar Fruit. She crossed her arms and hugged Poplar Fruit's neck. She rubbed her head and asked with a smile. Poplar Fruit reached out and touched Fong Beibei's face. He smiled and said, "Why choose my course? You don't like linguistics." Fong Beibei pressed her body against Poplar Fruit's body. She pouted and asked in Poplar Fruit's ear, "Then why don't you give me a high score?" Poplar Fruit turned around and looked at her. He said snappily, "If I really did that, would you accept it?" "I don't want to." Fong Beibei immediately responded, "I want my real results." "That's it. You know it yourself. Why are you asking me?" Poplar Fruit smiled and waved his arm behind him. He patted her little butt and said, "Stop messing around. I just want to see if you have the heart." Fong Beibei said. She looked at Poplar Fruit's computer. Poplar Fruit brought the computer home so that he could work at home. However, what puzzled Fong Beibei was that Poplar Fruit wasn't translating. He was writing Chinese. It wasn't a prose, but it was a long thesis. "What are you writing?" "A thesis." Fong Beibei asked curiously. Fong Beibei admired Poplar Fruit for a lot of things. One of them was his ability to write theses. Other people would be in so much pain when writing theses. But for Poplar Fruit, writing a thesis was like eating and drinking soup. As long as he had the inspiration, he could quickly write a thesis. Poplar Fruit's hands didn't stop. He was multitasking as he explained to Fong Beibei, "It's not a thesis. It's just a small part of a thesis that I've been researching recently." "Translation theory?" Fong Beibei asked curiously. "No, it's a new way to learn Chinese." Poplar Fruit smiled. "Isn't Chinese the hardest language to learn in the world? I'm thinking if I can find a common point or a new learning method to make Chinese as easy to learn as English." "Yeah, you've finished researching translation theory?" Fong Beibei asked curiously. "Nope. How could I finish researching translation theory?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Any theory is just a framework. I can only say that I'm constantly filling in the content that I agree with. In the future, there will be more people and more theories that will be incorporated. This is different from mathematics, which is a subject that tends towards the truth." Fong Beibei nodded, not fully understanding. Wawa. Just as Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were talking upstairs, Kiki's cries came from downstairs. "What's wrong?" Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei quickly ran to the corridor and looked downstairs. They saw that Su Jinfeng had already arrived and carried Kiki. But Kiki still didn't know why she was crying so hard. "Mom, what happened?" Poplar Fruit was anxious and didn't care that Fong Beibei didn't understand. So he asked his hometown dialect. "Uncle, Kiki, she hit her head." Young Linjie stood at the side, helpless. He could only look up and mumble to Poplar Fruit. "What's going on?" Fong Beibei didn't understand. She anxiously pulled Poplar Fruit's sleeve and pulled him downstairs as she asked. She said she hit her head. "It's probably a game of hide and seek." Kiki didn't look where she was going and hit her head. Poplar Fruit explained. He rushed to his mother's side. At this time, Kiki was still crying miserably. No matter how Su Jinfeng coaxed her, her crying didn't ease up. "She hid here." Su Jinfeng gestured. The windows in the village were relatively short. Kiki might have been talking to her brother while running. She didn't look where she was going and hit her head on the open window. Fortunately, she only hit the lower edge and not the sharp corner. Also, Kiki wasn't tall enough. She only hit her forehead and not her eyes or other parts of her body. But it was definitely not a light hit. Not to mention Su Jinfeng. Even if Poplar Fruit went down and took Kiki to comfort her, Kiki would still wail loudly. With the physical pain and mental shock, How could Kiki still listen to her father's comfort? Yang Lingjie lowered his head and stood at the side. He also knew that he didn't take good care of his sister and was afraid of being scolded by the adults. However, at this time, Poplar Fruit and the others were all concerned about Kiki and didn't care about him. "Auntie, do you have Wanwa oil at home? Do you want me to go buy it?" Fong Beibei asked. After Poplar Fruit sat down with Kiki in his arms, Fong Beibei gently lifted Kiki's bangs to check. She saw that there was a big bump on her forehead. Yes, yes. Su Jinfeng went to the room and rummaged through it. She said, "This is better. Xiao Jie used to hit his head a lot. It's very effective to apply this." She also handed over a big ball of cotton. Fong Beibei took it, but she didn't open it yet. She said, "Wait a moment. Kiki is still crying so hard. If I apply the medicine now, I'm afraid that her tears will go into her eyes." Since Kiki was born, she had been protected by her father. She had never encountered such a serious hit. Not to mention hitting her head, she even rarely encountered small injuries and pain. And this time, it could be said that Kiki had encountered the most serious injury since she was born. Even when she was robbed, with Poplar Fruit's body protecting her, she didn't suffer such a serious injury when she fell down from the car. Poplar Fruit could see that the big bump on her head had a purplish-green, extravasated blood. At first, Poplar Fruit was also panicking, especially when Kiki was crying so heartbreakingly beside his ear. But slowly, Poplar Fruit found that Kiki didn't suffer any internal injury except for the extravasated blood. He came to his senses. "What are you doing? Why am I panicking? I have internal strength. I'm good at dispelling blood stasis and treating injuries." Poplar Fruit smiled, and his heart calmed down a lot. Su Jinfeng, who was concerned about Kiki, noticed Poplar Fruit's smile. She immediately said angrily, "What are you laughing about as a father? Your daughter hit her head. Is it very funny?" Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. He quickly waved his hand and said, "No, I just feel that it's not a big deal. She's a child, so it's inevitable for her to bump into things." This wasn't unreasonable. After all, children who grew up in a greenhouse would easily be defeated by setbacks in the future. But it's such a big bump. Fong Beibei pinched Poplar Fruit angrily and agreed with Su Jinfeng. "Andy is right. You shouldn't be laughing. Your daughter is crying so hard. Can't you feel that it's very painful here?" How could he explain? There was no way to explain. Facing the army of his mother and girlfriend, Poplar Fruit could only obediently admit his mistake. Chapter 9:36. After returning to Yangcheng, the bump on Kiki's head gradually subsided under her father's care. However, the little girl seemed to have forgotten the pain after the scar healed. Within 2 days, she began to jump up and down and was as naughty as a boy. Time passed quickly, and Poplar Fruit welcomed his first class of the semester. Although he kept telling himself not to be nervous, and Poplar Fruit didn't show any signs of nervousness, Poplar Fruit still arrived at the classroom early. Today wasn't the first time Poplar Fruit had a class, but it was the first time Poplar Fruit had a formal class in his life. After all, in the past, he was either a substitute teacher, a cram school type of training, or a distance education class for children. Compared to today, not only did the entire class belong to him, but he also had a formal organization. The previous classes were a bit small. Yesterday, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei went shopping for clothes. What kind of clothes Poplar Fruit wore for his first class was a big deal for the young couple. The Chinese tunic suit was too mature and didn't suit a 25-year-old young man like Poplar Fruit. A formal suit was too serious, and a casual one was too exaggerated. Or it could be said that if he dressed too handsome, it would distract the students. In the end, he simply learned from the young foreign professors and wore a simple collared t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. It looked young and energetic, but not too exaggerated. Moreover, when worn by the tall Poplar Fruit, it looked simple and fashionable. There were many people who wanted to choose Poplar Fruit's class. There were so many that Poplar Fruit couldn't believe his eyes. The medium-sized classroom was full of people. There were students sitting on the floor in the middle aisle. There were people in the open space at the back. There were also students peeking in from outside the door. It looked like the scale of 100 people was definitely over. Poplar Fruit estimated that 150 people wasn't impossible, and a lot of people meant that it was noisy, and difficult to control. Poplar Fruit picked up the microphone and tapped it lightly. His magnetic voice came out from the loudspeaker. "I'm a bit flattered." The students in the classroom started to respond with kind laughter. They gradually quieted down. They pricked up their ears and wanted to hear how Poplar Fruit would open the class. "I have 2 public elective classes this semester, Translation Theory and Practice and Basic Swedish. This is the first class of Translation Theory and Practice." Poplar Fruit smiled and gave a simple introduction. "From a name, it's not an interesting class. Am I right? If it was when I was an undergraduate student, I wouldn't even be interested in choosing such a course." Yangwa was like a peer, using an equal tone to chat with her classmates. "Huh." The students below the stage laughed one after another. They really felt the same way. "That's why I've been very nervous. I was worried that the classroom would be empty when I came in the morning." Poplar Fruit bowed to the students gratefully and said, "Now I have to thank all of you. Thank you for your support." Applause immediately sounded. This was the students' sincere response to Poplar Fruit. Several students shouted, "Poplar Fruit Senior, we're here for you." The reason why so many people came today was that the news of Poplar Fruit's class had already spread on the internet. Many of Poplar Fruit's hardcore fans were excited. They felt that this was a benefit given to them by the school. For the sake of Poplar Fruit, how could they not choose this class? As for the other students, some of them really liked translation, and some of them just wanted to join in the fun. I know. Before class started, a few students came up to me and asked for autographs and photos. Of course, I wouldn't refuse. Poplar Fruit nodded and said with a smile. The audience burst into laughter. The girls who had asked for autographs just now blushed and covered their mouths as they laughed. But there's a problem that I've emphasized many times. I'm not a star. I'm just an ordinary person who once had a little fame. And in the school, I'm just your senior, or a bit arrogant, your teacher for this class. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. The small commotion in the audience gradually subsided. They also felt that Poplar Fruit was beginning to be serious. Today is the first class, and also an opportunity for us to get to know each other. After today's class, everyone has a chance to make a new choice. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. There's no good or bad in public elective classes. It's only about whether it suits you or not. I hope that everyone can calmly analyze, put aside my personal factors, and see whether it suits you or not, and whether you like this class. Poplar Fruit looked a bit serious. If it's really not suitable, I also hope that everyone can make room for the students who really want to learn translation. Ahem. Realizing that he was too serious, Poplar Fruit suddenly laughed. I'm talking about making room. Of course, I don't mean to ask you to leave your seats, but I'm talking about the seats in the course selection system. My class allows you to sit in, so whether you choose to attend or not, you're welcome to come and listen if you have time, or if you're interested. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I'll treat formal and informal students the same. The only difference is that the students who choose to attend the class in the system have to follow the school's rules and my course requirements. What requirements? The students in the audience looked at Poplar Fruit in confusion. My course requirements are still very strict. Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, whether it's the 40% average grade or the 60% final exam grade, it's not easy to get. If you're not really interested in the translation industry, you're not really invested in it, you'll be in danger of failing. Fail? Everyone began to look at Poplar Fruit with some trepidation. Even the girls who were laughing and chasing stars just now put away the smiles on their faces. After all, the students of Higashiyama University had the most basic qualities of a student, and they still had a passionate pursuit of grades. Or I can give you a grading standard. Poplar Fruit wrote a row of words on the blackboard. There are 3 kinds of grades for the final exam: 30, 75, and 90 and above. It means that you didn't study hard, you studied hard but didn't learn well, and you'll be graded according to the final result. The students in the audience looked at Poplar Fruit dumbfoundedly. It was the first time they saw such a strange grading system. But Poplar Fruit's intention was also very obvious. He wouldn't mistreat students who studied hard, and he was even willing to let students who studied well get high marks. It seemed that this warm guy's senior brother couldn't be fooled by a few soft girls acting coquettishly. From these words, he wasn't necessarily simpler than the legendary for famous supplements and Miju Shirtai. Chapter 9:37. At this moment, poplar fruit was completely different from the poplar fruit in everyone's imagination. Although he was still standing on the stage with a bright smile, everyone could not help but shudder. It was a bit like the fusion of ice and fire. It was not over yet. 10% attendance points, 10 points for perfect attendance, and 0 points for missing a class. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Don't underestimate my memory. I can completely remember the faces of all 60 students. I can tell at a glance if you're absent or if you're looking for someone to substitute for you." Poplar Fruit pointed at himself and said somewhat wittily. However, no one laughed. "There is also 30% of homework points." Poplar Fruit said, "Since it is a translation practice class, homework is indispensable. Whether it is in class or after class, I hope that students who choose this class can take it seriously. Those who are not serious will get 0 points. Those who are serious will get at least 10 points. Those who have made significant progress will get 20 points, and those who have done well will get more than 25 points. Poplar Fruit said. The usual points also highlighted Poplar Fruit's clear grading standards. Does everyone find it difficult? Poplar Fruit finally stopped his cold data explanation. He paused and looked at the students below the stage. Many people nodded silently, making little noise. It seemed that they were all frightened by Poplar Fruit. This was normal. Poplar Fruit was a very professional course. Students who chose this course came from different departments, especially science students who chose Poplar Fruit's class. It was relatively difficult for science students to perform well in such a course. Actually, it's not that bad. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "I am not strict with you. Unless you don't come to class or treat the course carelessly, you will generally not be in danger of failing the course. As long as you take it seriously, even if you do badly, you can get at least 65 points." Poplar Fruit said, "As for those students who did well, I mean those above average, their scores started from 89. Wow. The students below the stage began to react. Didn't that mean that there were around 30 people who could get 89 points? 89 points was already very high, and this was above average. When I said average, I was talking about everyone, not the number of people. Poplar Fruit corrected the students' misconceptions. I can give you a not-so-accurate reference standard. Everyone should be at least level 8 professional translators. The audience was silent. Level 8 specialized esper. What an unattainable goal. Even for an English major, there was no guarantee that they could pass the level 8 exam. So, my suggestion is that those who haven't obtained a CET 6 certificate, or those who think that their English level hasn't reached CET 6, should not consider becoming an official student of this course." Poplar Fruit said sincerely. Poplar Fruit looked at the depressed expression of many girls. He smiled and said, "All right, why are you all so depressed? Didn't I say it before? If you don't have confidence in your own ability and are worried about affecting your results, that's fine. As long as you're still interested, I welcome you all to come and listen at any time." Obviously, these words couldn't arouse everyone's interest. The series of blows just now made the atmosphere drop to the freezing point. Poplar Fruit shrugged his shoulders and returned to the topic. In everyone's eyes, what kind of profession is a translator? Poplar Fruit threw the chalk in his hand into the chalk box. He took the microphone and walked to the front. He leaned on the podium and asked everyone in a cool manner. With his appearance, Poplar Fruit saved a bit of the situation. A girl timidly raised her hand. Translator is a profession that deals with words in different languages. Poplar Fruit nodded. The girl stood up and said, "That's right and wrong." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Translation is the translation of words, different from interpretation. But in essence, translators are also a bridge for language communication. If it's far-reaching, then we can proudly say that we are the contractors for the transmission of Chinese culture and foreign culture. Without the efforts of translators, We wouldn't be able to see Harry Potter in China, we wouldn't be able to understand Inception in the cinema, and we wouldn't be able to watch Korean dramas and blockbuster cartoons on the computer. Poplar Fruit said affirmatively. It can be said that everyone can enjoy such a diverse and wonderful life, and it can't be separated from the contributions of translators. Poplar Fruit's impassioned speech also received a lot of applause. Poplar Fruit suddenly laughed and said, "However, from a more realistic point of view, translation is still a very profitable profession." The reaction of the students in the audience was different. Some were stunned, and some couldn't help but laugh. In the past, everyone has heard that interpretation can make money, but you haven't heard that translation can make money, right? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Yes. Many people answered in unison. A year after I graduated, because my daughter was suddenly born, I had to resign from the foreign trade company to take care of her. Poplar Fruit suddenly talked about his own story. Everyone was a bit confused. At that time, it could be said that I was out of ammunition and food, and was almost at the end of the road. Poplar Fruit didn't have a heavy heart. Instead, he said in a relaxed manner, "Suddenly, I had an opportunity. I entered the translation industry, and in less than a week, I became a gold medal translator. Then, I earned my first bucket of gold after I resigned. Just by taking care of my daughter, I earned more than $100,000 a month through translation." Poplar Fruit said casually, "And this was money that I couldn't earn a year when I was working." The students in the audience applauded one after another. They looked at Poplar Fruit with enthusiastic eyes, as if they were looking at an inspirational legend. And this was not the end. Poplar Fruit talked about New Translation Road Publishing House again, describing the changes made by New Translation Road as an industry changer. Poplar Fruit showed the results of the translators he trained at New Translation Road Publishing House. "I won't talk about me. Because I translated teacher Mo Yan's book, my sales and dividends are much higher than most people. But these translators..." Poplar Fruit pointed to some data on the PowerPoint and said, "After less than 3 months of training, 2 of their translations were approved by our publishing house, and then they began to sell abroad. In the past half month, their highest sales volume was 700 copies. Of course, the growth rate of this number is still increasing." Poplar Fruit said, "But in the past half month, this translator has earned nearly 2,700 yuan. Not much. Is that right?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "What if I tell you that after a year, this book will bring him at least 2,000 yuan in dividends?" Yes. At the beginning, the translator's income was lower than that of a successful person with a monthly salary of 10 or 20,000 yuan. But after a few years and a few more gold mines, he would be able to sit back and enjoy a good life. Let's not talk about anything else. Just look at the best-selling authors. Ms. Rowling had published a few Harry Potter books, and it was enough for her to eat for several lifetimes. It was like playing a game where gold coins fell from the sky. Poplar Fruit's introduction made many students breathe heavily. They were immersed in the world outlined by Poplar Fruit, and the atmosphere became more and more heated. The reform we have made in this industry is to let translators participate in the division of benefits and distribute according to their work. As long as you are outstanding, you can earn more," Poplar Fruit said, waving his hand. "And this time, the class will start from the shallow to the deep, bringing students who are interested in the translation industry into the door. It will be based on practice, and theory will be supplemented. It will allow everyone to gain a deeper understanding of translation through actual combat, and then earn a little money." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said, "You heard me right. You can indeed earn money by attending this class. I can't guarantee how much you will earn, but maybe you can earn some pocket money to buy small gifts for your family and loved ones." Poplar Fruit did not say it humorously, but under such circumstances, the students below the stage could not help but clap and laugh. It was difficult to evaluate Poplar Fruit's class. The previous blow had made the atmosphere drop to the freezing point, and now Poplar Fruit had used many inspiring examples and bright prospects to stir up the atmosphere again. It was like a song of ice and fire. Chapter 9:38. Song Juin, and Chun Amlin came downstairs and saw Poplar Fruit's car parked there. He went over and opened the car door for Chun Amlin to get in first. Then he went around to the other side and sat in the passenger seat. Today, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were going to take a look at the house again to confirm the final renovation plan. Song Jiwen heard it and wanted to go too, so Poplar Fruit came to Lan Martial Arts School to pick them up. Look at you, it's time to get off work now and not bringing Lan home to rest. Why are you joining in the fun? Poplar Fruit glanced at the rearview mirror and looked at the tired Chun Amlin. He said to Song Jiwen, "That's right, sister-in-law is working hard." Fong Beibei was in the back seat. She reached out and held Chun Amlin's hand and said, "Don't you get to rest at noon? They won't come at noon, right?" Kiki looked up at sister-in-law. She also sensibly opened her arms and hugged sister-in-law and Sister Beibei's hands, as if she wanted to use her own arms to get rid of the hard work for her sister. How could it not be hard? Lan Martial Arts School only opened this week. In order to make her martial arts school popular, she didn't return to Jean City for the Spring Festival and stayed in Yang City to make preparations alone. Although Song Jiwen helped a lot, he still had to go back to his hometown for the Spring Festival. After opening, business was indeed good. On one hand, it benefited from her and Song Jiwen's frequent square dancing and exercise with the uncles and aunties in the nearby community, building a solid foundation for the masses. On the other hand, it also benefited from a short Tai Chi duel video that she and Poplar Fruit filmed together. One had to know that at first, this video was only circulated on WeChat, but later on, it went on the internet's trending list. This video was not worth mentioning in terms of Kung Fu. The two of them even gave up on real Kung Fu for the sake of viewing. Instead, they used some fancy performance moves. However, just like those action movies, people like this kind of cool feeling. The video became popular because of Poplar Fruit, and Chun Amlin's valiant appearance in the video was also infatuated with many otakus. With a broad base and a high reputation among the youths, Lan Martial Arts School, opened by Chun Amlin, naturally became popular. The first batch of 3 classes of different ages were all full. This was what Chun Amlin wanted. In the past, the dojo had always been low-key and relied on word of mouth. But now, her philosophy was to strengthen the publicity through various social networks. She was doing things in a high-profile manner, and now she had achieved very good results. However, it seemed that the Lan Martial Arts School was having a hard time with only one person supporting it. Chun Amlin's body wasn't made of iron like Yang was. She had to train 3 classes of children by herself. Even though she had practiced martial arts since she was young, she still couldn't take it. "It's nothing." Chun Amlin smiled. "I can rest at noon, but there's still a lot of chores to do, so I can't sleep at noon. You'd better call a few seniors and juniors to help. You'll be exhausted sooner or later." Song Jiwen glanced at Chun Amlin and snorted. "No way. When I left, I said that I would only go back after I proved myself." Chun Amlin said angrily, "I don't want to borrow other people's strength. Then would it kill you to take 1 or 2 less classes?" Song Jiwen quarreled with her again. "You said it was an experiment. Why did you make it so extreme? Even if you're not tired, I'm tired." Chun Amlin frowned and snorted unhappily. She said, "If you're tired, then don't come. I didn't force you to help me." Fong Beibei pulled Chun Amlin from behind. She was very anxious when she saw the two of them arguing. "You didn't force me to come? Didn't you say that half of the name Lan Martial Arts School was mine? Why would I shamelessly help you every day after work?" Song Jiwen waved away Poplar Fruit's right hand and said angrily, "Have you ever thought about how much you can bear? I recruited 3 classes just to make more money and improve the performance of the martial arts school to prove that I'm right. Right?" Chun Amlin said unhappily. "It's fine if you don't want to help, but why are you always complaining?" The two of them didn't stop arguing even when they reached Poplar Fruit's house. "I'm in that building over there." Song Jiwen pointed at another building that was still under construction less than 30 meters away. He said with a smile, "Although it's not as amazing as your duplex, it's still not bad. It's more than 160 square meters. In order to buy a house, you took a loan and made yourself look like a pauper. Why?" Chun Amlin and he couldn't help but have the same personality. They were obviously words of concern, but they made people angry. Okay, don't quarrel. Poplar Fruit clasped Song Jiwon's neck and stood between the two of them. He said with a smile, "Today, give me face. Like a new house. And don't quarrel in front of Kiki." Fong Beibei followed behind with a smile while holding Kiki. The little girl also nodded vigorously in agreement. Taking the elevator to the mountainous area, Song Jiwon stepped in first and shouted, "Big, one word, big. Old Gua, your first floor is almost as big as mine." Poplar Fruit smiled, but didn't say anything. Fong Beibei put down Kiki and held her hand with one hand. With the other hand, she pulled Chun Amlin, who was quarreling with Song Jiwon, to visit each room. After visiting for a while, Song Jiwon came to the balcony and enjoyed the night view with Poplar Fruit in the cold wind. He couldn't help but sigh. "Your place is good. If it wasn't too expensive, I would also want to buy a room like yours. This balcony can be used to play a table of mahjong. I lent you money, but you refused," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "It's okay. Take it slow. After a few days, when we have enough money, we'll sell that one and get a better one." Song Jiwon combed his hair and said with a smile. He was very clear when it came to money. "I heard that you started classes today." Song Jiwon nudged Poplar Fruit with his elbow and said with a smile, "How is it? Are there a lot of junior sisters around you? And the course selection system is going to be overcrowded?" Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile and said, "It used to be, but after today, it's not necessarily the case." "Why?" Song Jiwon asked doubtfully. "Because I scared them in the first class. They said that if they chose my class and didn't study hard, I would mercilessly let them fail," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He neglected the fact that he reignited everyone's passion for translation during the second class. "You're really a beast." Song Jiwon laughed and punched Poplar Fruit. The two of them went in. Fong Beibei and Chun Amlin were coming down. Because Kiki needed to be supported to walk down the stairs, Fong Beibei continued to talk to Chun Amlin. There are a total of 6 rooms. 2 rooms below and 4 above. The one above is the bedroom, and the one below is the biggest one. Uncle said that he would leave it for him to use as a gym or practice room. Then there's the study room. Kiki also has her own room. Kiki gasped for breath. Halfway down the stairs, she stood still and said, "Kiki's room. There's Pleasant Goat. There's Big Wolf." Listening to her talk, it was really endless. But the little girl's childish voice still made Poplar Fruit and the others laugh. Chapter 9:39. During the basic Swedish class, although the strict Poplar Fruit once again scared a lot of students, there were still a lot of people who signed up for his class. Many true fans quit the system and changed from official students to unofficial auditing students. A lot of empty seats were left, and more students who were really interested in English joined in. In less than a day, the course selection system was full again. However, at the beginning of the second week, the course selection system was closed and no one could choose again. Regardless of whether they had chosen class or not, they all focused on listening to the class and learning. This was just like what Poplar Fruit had said to them. Whether they chose a class or not was just a matter of credits. As long as they were willing to learn, they could also learn knowledge by auditing. As for Poplar Fruit, he did not discriminate. Any student who came to the class could participate and receive the same guidance as Poplar Fruit. During the second and third weeks, Poplar Fruit's classes were still full. Even if it was a Swedish class that no one knew, the students still flocked to it. This was because Poplar Fruit's class was too interesting. He did not start with the boring pronunciation of the phonetic symbols. Instead, he picked out a few typical sentences and let the students familiarize themselves with the pronunciation rules that they had never tried before. This also allowed many students to proudly say to their friends in Swedish after the second week of class, "Hey, beautiful, do you want to meet me tonight?" Or, "I think your nose is like an elephant's." On the internet, Young's current image was that of a has-been celebrity. After all, it had been too long since he had anything new to talk about. Moreover, he didn't appear on TV as often as other celebrities, so naturally, everyone's pursuit of him had gradually faded. Only the true fans of Poplar Fruit and Kiki continued to follow Poplar Fruit's Weibo, and the interesting life of the father and daughter became a great joy in their lives. Some students used their mobile phones to post videos of Poplar Fruit's classes on the internet. There was no expected popularity, and this could be explained very well. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't care about this. This was because he was teaching and imparting knowledge, not seeking fame and fortune. It was enough for him to have people enter the field of translation and linguistics under his guidance. There were many people who really paid attention to these videos with terrible quality and noisy sound. There were only a few people who followed in Poplar Fruit's footsteps academically. For example, Professor Rowling and the 2 graduate students he brought along to do research with Poplar Fruit. There were also undergraduate students, but they could not keep up with the research progress of Poplar Fruit. Originally, Professor Luo Lin didn't care. However, after he watched Poplar Fruit's translation theory and practice video online, he ordered his students to attend Poplar Fruit's class and learn from Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's lecture on translation theory was not very profound. With the foundation of Beijing International Studies University, even undergraduates who had not been involved in the relevant courses had read books to understand it. But Professor Luo Lin laughed and pointed out what he valued about Poplar Fruit. What is truly priceless is his experience. You might not know Poplar Fruit well, but I can tell you that in terms of translation experience, no one in China can compare to Poplar Fruit. Professor Luo Lin said, "I can't, neither can Dean Shi Shan." This had nothing to do with the number of translations, although the total number of words translated by Poplar Fruit was not a small number. The reason why Poplar Fruit was so far ahead of all the translators in China was because of his diverse translation experience. Other people would at most be an English translator and a translator for a small number of languages, but Yang Guo had translated for more than 10 languages. Not only that, if you counted the number of translations between these 10 languages, the number of translations would be terrifying. Putting aside the school matters for now, Poplar Fruit had other things to do. He had asked Song Jiwen to find a renovation team to renovate the house, but the careless Poplar Fruit did not take it to heart. On the other hand, Fong Bei, other than going to class, was running over to the new house to supervise the renovation process. Of course, Poplar Fruit was not idle either. He had more things to do than Fong Bei. Fat Dragon and Kai Si-min had both come to Yangcheng. They had recruited more than 20 employees. While purchasing, they also transported the purchased equipment to Guishan Province's Lidong County. The Department of Education had arranged a warehouse there, and a few youths from Xiong Village were helping guard it. Poplar Fruit's original plan was to personally bring Fat Dragon and Kai Si-min to Lidong County, but the plan could not keep up with the changes. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to let Fat Dragon and Kai Si-min take charge of the installation of the long-distance education equipment. He followed Zheng Yujie and boarded the plane to Canada. This was really sudden because it was already the end of February. Yang Guo was going to attend a conference in Macau next month. If she didn't handle things properly in Canada, it would become a tug of war. Yang Guo would be in big trouble. Going to Canada was mainly a problem left over from last year. Poplar Fruit met Alice Munro and had the idea of introducing her books into China. However, at that time, Zheng Yujie was still at Dongxing Publishing, and Peng Yu was busy promoting books. He could only put the plan on hold. Before the Spring Festival, Poplar Fruit contacted Alice Munro, but the old lady did not immediately agree to Poplar Fruit. 2 days ago, she suddenly summoned Poplar Fruit to Canada to talk to her face to face. Why was that? Poplar Fruit got the answer before he boarded the plane. The person who called Poplar Fruit was Professor Anderson of the Nobel Prize in Literature, who came to China to look for Professor Mo Yin. It turned out that Munro was also on the list of nominees for the Nobel Prize this year. She knew Professor Anderson, so she got a recommendation for Poplar Fruit from him. She wanted Poplar Fruit to translate her books into Swedish. Actually, it did not mean that Poplar Fruit's translations would win the prize. Professor Anderson just thought that Poplar Fruit translations would make them feel more comfortable. After learning that Poplar Fruit was the translator of last year's Nobel Prize in Literature winner Mo Yin, Monroe was even more tempted. It was not impossible to give her works to Poplar Fruit. So that's how it is. Grandma Monroe has a lot of ideas. Poplar Fruit was a little depressed. However, Zhang Yujie was not angry. She comforted Poplar Fruit, telling him that it was normal. In business, there was no such thing as friendship. Besides, Poplar Fruit and Grandma Monroe had only met once. On the plane, Yangwu didn't use the boring few hours to sleep. He took advantage of this time to quickly search his memory for the Monroe grandmother's masterpiece, Escape, and then began to translate it into Swedish. Escape was only a short story, so it did not take Poplar Fruit a long time. However, to be able to take out this translation during the negotiation showed Poplar Fruit's sincerity. Didn't success come from the accumulation of little details? Chapter 940. On the plane, because Poplar Fruit either had his eyes closed or was typing on the computer, Zhang Yujie just looked at him from the side and then slowly fell asleep. They didn't say much until they got off the plane. Seeing that Poplar Fruit called Fong Bei to report his safety as soon as he got off the plane, Zhang Yujie snorted unhappily. "What's the matter?" Her voice was so loud that Poplar Fruit certainly heard it. He put away his phone and looked up at her with amusement. "Let's see you slowly become a henpecked husband." Zhang Yujie was not afraid of him. She raised her head and said proudly with disdain, "Isn't it just a business trip? Do you need to call me all the time to report?" Poplar Fruit was too lazy to argue with her about the difference between reporting and reporting safety. He smiled and said, "Okay, stop it. You're not a dawdler. Let's go quickly. The sooner we finish our business, the sooner we can go back. Didn't I tell you that I have a seminar in Macau? If I miss it, my teacher will cut me." Zhang Yujie snorted coldly and wrapped her windbreaker tightly around her. With a quick movement of her hand, she crossed the belt around her waist and walked out of the airport in a hurry. Poplar Fruit shook his head and dragged their suitcases, following behind like a bodyguard. Ontario was considered to be in the south of Canada, but now it was still snowing and the cold wind was whistling. "Why is it so cold?" Zhang Yujie and Poplar Fruit both set off from Yangcheng, which was not cold at the moment, so they didn't wear thick clothes, especially Zhang Yujie. She was wearing a thin, long-sleeved shirt under her windbreaker. In the snowy Ottawa, she suddenly froze into an ice beauty. She stood on the side of the road and waited for a taxi. The cold air went straight to her neck, and she was so cold that she stamped her feet. Suddenly, something warm wrapped around her from behind. Zhang Yujie turned her head and saw that Poplar Fruit had taken off his leather jacket and put it on her. "Are you crazy?" Zhang Yujie was stunned for a moment. Then she pushed Poplar Fruit and grabbed the leather jacket that had slipped off and asked angrily. At this time, Poplar Fruit only had a short-sleeved shirt left on his body, and his strong and well-shaped muscles appeared on his arms. Although Poplar Fruit looked more handsome like this, now was not the time to act cool. Yangwu pressed down Zhang Yujie's hand that was about to push the clothes back. She smiled and asked, "What are you doing? Aren't you cold? Hurry up and put it on. Be good." Yangwu's tone carried a gentle reprimand that was reserved for Fong Bei. "Are you trying to be a hero by putting it on me? Aren't you cold?" Zhang Yujie did not fall for his trick. She said angrily, "You're wearing a short-sleeved shirt in winter. If you catch a cold tonight, how are we going to meet the client tomorrow?" "I'm really not cold." Poplar Fruit smiled. When the cold wind blew, it could only make the corner of his clothes flutter. Poplar Fruit stood tall and said without trembling, "Have you forgotten? I'm a kung fu man." Under Poplar Fruit's tug, Zhang Yujie helplessly put on Poplar Fruit's leather jacket. Although it was not as good as a down jacket, it was much warmer than before. However, her expression was still angry, as if she was still at odds with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit did not understand. Soon, the taxi arrived. Zhang Yujie helped Poplar Fruit to put the suitcase in the back of the car. She followed Poplar Fruit into the taxi, but turned her head and looked out of the window. Poplar Fruit did not care about her. After he told the driver the address, he began to chat with the driver. One of them was a local native uncle who could talk about all kinds of trivial things in the streets, while the other was an extremely intelligent and knowledgeable weirdo. Not only could he pick up on any topic, but he could also talk about the local customs of Canada and even Ottawa. I saw many stalls on the street with colorful flags. Is it because the Maple Leaf Festival is coming? Poplar Fruit asked with interest. It's still early. The Maple Leaf Festival is next month. You came at a bad time. The driver laughed. But it doesn't matter. As you can see, you can buy maple candy products all year round. The colorful flags of the stalls are for tourists like you, so you don't have to care about the festival. As long as you're happy, every day is a festival. That's a very philosophical sentence. Poplar Fruit smiled and gave him a thumbs up. The driver saw it from the rearview mirror and laughed. By the way, can I ask, where can I buy a different birthday present in Ottawa? It could be a surprise present for the girl I like. Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. The driver looked at Zhang Yujie strangely in the rearview mirror. He thought that Zhang Yujie did not understand English, but that did not stop him from introducing the place to Poplar Fruit. The driver introduced a few places, but the one he recommended the most was Fulton's Pancake House. You're lucky. This week, their maple candy production studio is only open to the public. Take note, they're only open until the end of April. The driver laughed. You can buy it or learn how to make it yourself. Poplar Fruit asked the driver to point out the location on the map on his phone. He smiled and hugged him before paying the driver and getting out of the car. He definitely couldn't go there today. It had taken him more than an hour to get here from the airport, and it was already 2 in the afternoon. If he took another transport to the small town where the Menlo granny lived, it would definitely be night by then. So, Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujie followed the plan and checked into the hotel they had booked online. Of course, there were 2 rooms. At the door, Poplar Fruit handed the suitcase to Zhang Yujie and said with a smile, "Here, I'll stay across from you. If you need anything, just come and find me." Got it. So long-winded. Zhang Yujie lazily raised her eyes and looked at Poplar Fruit. She slapped the Poplar Fruit's leather jacket that was hanging on her elbow on Poplar Fruit's chest, pulled the suitcase, and opened the door to enter. This attitude really made people angry and helpless. Poplar Fruit watched her go in and shook his head with a smile. He opened the door and went back to his room. Sitting on the bed, Poplar Fruit sent a message to Fong Bei on WeChat. "I've already checked into the hotel. I'll go out and buy you a gift later, ha! Ding dong." His WeChat immediately rang. Fong Bei actually replied. She asked, "Wow, what gift?" "But, Uncle, let me tell you, you have to be careful when buying a gift. I don't want a gift that only costs money." Hee hee. Fong Bei was still very naughty. Poplar Fruit's mouth hung a smile. He stopped sending WeChat messages and directly called. "Hey, why aren't you sleeping? You're naughty. I spanked your butt. I'm waiting for your news." Fong Bei yawned, but still giggled and said coquettishly, "How am I naughty?" "You're obviously naughty." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Go to sleep. When you wake up, call me." "Okay," Fong Bei promised sweetly. Now that she was at ease, she could indeed sleep. Chapter 941. I'm going out later. After having lunch with Zhang Yujie at a Western restaurant near the hotel, Poplar Fruit picked up a napkin to wipe his mouth and said, "I know." Zhang Yujie looked up at Poplar Fruit and turned her head to the side. "It's not like I don't understand English." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Then are you going to wait for me at the hotel? Or are you going out on your own? Why can't I go with you?" Zhang Yujie turned her face. Her eyes were a little red as she questioned. "No, I thought you wouldn't want to." Poplar Fruit raised his hand and said with cold sweat, "Since you want to go, then let's go together. You keep saying I thought. Zhang Yujie's emotions were faintly out of control, but she controlled it very well. She took 2 deep breaths and said with a muffled nose, "Why didn't you ask if I was willing?" Zhang Yujie was obviously referring to the fact that after she came to Yangcheng, Poplar Fruit had been avoiding her. Other than the 1 or 2 times they needed to meet for work, he rarely took the initiative to contact her. Zhang Yujie felt wronged. She thought sadly, "I was willing to see the 2 of you go out together and come to Yangcheng to wait for an almost impossible hope, but you still treat me like this. Do you think I'll feel awkward and do something to your girlfriend?" Unable to argue with Zhang Yujie, Poplar Fruit could only remain silent. The two got into the car and drove to the Fulton Pancake House that the driver mentioned. At the Fulton Pancake House, Poplar Fruit bought some maple syrup and candy. He also learned from Zheng Yujie to make some maple pancakes and cookies. Zheng Yujie's hands-on skills were the worst. In the end, she just stood aside and watched. She randomly ordered Poplar Fruit and secretly ate the pancakes in the plastic box. At this time, Zheng Yujie's mood improved a little. She even sighed and said that time passed too quickly. The Fulton Pancake House didn't only sell pancakes, and the street didn't only sell pancakes and maple syrup products. Due to the large number of tourists visiting, the smart businessman quickly discovered another business opportunity: handicrafts and specialty products. After all, maple syrup products were mostly food. It was fine as a gift, but it was far from enough as a souvenir for one's own trip. Therefore, the Crystal Maple Leaf Gift House that Poplar Fruit walked into sold handicrafts that were compatible with Canadian culture. Miniature sculpture? Yanghua asked in surprise. Yes, miniature sculptures, the shop owner said with a smile. Of course, it won't be too small. You can see it clearly with a magnifying glass. You can engrave the words you want to express on it. You have to know that maple leaves represent eternal love. The blessings and words of love you engrave on it will be warm forever. It does sound good. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and laughed. But I want to engrave it in Chinese. Can you engrave it in Chinese? No problem at all. The shop owner smiled and said, we are all laser engraving now. The whole process is controlled by a computer. You can type what you want to say yourself, and then you can choose the font you like. We have more than 100 artistic fonts in Chinese specially installed here for Chinese tourists. Heavens, he really took care of everything. Poplar Fruit was convinced. He decided to make a gift for Fong Beibei there. What did he say? Zheng Yujie didn't understand some of the technical terms. After Poplar Fruit stopped, she asked curiously. He said that he can make a crystal maple leaf and then engrave what I want to say on it. Poplar Fruit smiled with satisfaction. I plan to make a birthday gift for Beibei here. Too happy, Poplar Fruit forgot about Zheng Yujie's feelings. While Poplar Fruit sat in front of the computer, typing, choosing fonts, and standing up to wait for the finished product, Zheng Yujie sat silently at the side, watching the man busy for another woman. She had mixed feelings, but more than that, she felt wronged and sad. Half an hour later, Poplar Fruit walked out of the Crystal Maple Leaf Gift House with Zheng Yujie with a red gift bag. He turned his head and asked, "Oh, right. Why didn't you buy some souvenirs? This Crystal Maple Leaf is pretty good. I highly recommend it. As a gift. Cough. It's also okay to give it to your family." "Forget it. I'm not in the mood." Zheng Yujie shook her head. Her first sentence was a little dispirited, but after that, she changed to her previous swift and decisive attitude. "Are you done? If you're done, let's go back to the hotel and discuss how to persuade Minlo tomorrow." "Done," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He quite liked Zheng Yujie's point. She could pick up and let go. Even if she was in a bad mood, she could quickly adjust and wouldn't cause trouble for the people around her. However, Poplar Fruit obviously overestimated Zheng Yujie's ability to adjust herself, or he underestimated the depth of Zheng Yujie's feelings for him. Zheng Yujie waited until they returned to the hotel. She followed Poplar Fruit into his room and then asked in a low voice, "At that time, why did you choose her?" Poplar Fruit's body stiffened and turned around. "You don't have to tell me that you two have been together for a long time." Zheng Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit with burning eyes. She didn't avoid it. She gently gritted her teeth and said, "I know, when I confessed to you, you were still single. At that time, I knew in my heart that the one I liked was her." Poplar Fruit was silent for a long time before he sighed and said, "I don't know either. Maybe I fell in love with her the first time I saw her." "If you met me first, would you still choose her?" Zheng Yujie raised her hand, wiped the corner of her eyes, and asked. Poplar Fruit did know Fong Beibei first, but in terms of familiarity, when Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie became good friends, Fong Beibei and Poplar Fruit were still strangers who had only met once. Poplar Fruit was silent for a while before he said, "Maybe." He didn't say in detail. With Poplar Fruit's character, if he was only friends with Zheng Yujie, then he would still choose Fong Beibei. But if he was already together with Zheng Yujie before he met Fong Beibei, then Fong Beibei wouldn't be a choice. What if she wasn't there? Zheng Yujie was so weak in front of Poplar Fruit for the first time. She asked with tears in her eyes, "Would you accept me?" Poplar Fruit was silent. There was actually an answer to this question. If Fong Beibei had never appeared in his life, then he would have chosen Zheng Yujie. Because, to be honest, Poplar Fruit had been moved by Zheng Yujie's infatuation more than once. But there aren't so many ifs in life. Poplar Fruit didn't want to say the answer. He looked away from Zheng Yujie's face, sighed, and said, "Yujie, you're a good girl. You should know." Zheng Yujie interrupted Poplar Fruit. She wiped her tears and widened her beautiful eyes to stop herself from crying. She said firmly, "Don't try to persuade me. I won't give up." She turned and left the room. After the door closed, Poplar Fruit stared blankly at Zheng Yujie's back. After a long time, he held his head with both hands and sighed to the sky. "Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do this?" Chapter 942. Yanghua and Zheng Yujie wouldn't bring emotional matters into work. During dinner, the two of them acted as if they didn't have a quarrel just now. They discussed what they should discuss and joked about what they should laugh about. Even when Poplar Fruit continued to fine-tune the translation of escape, Zheng Yujie sat on the sofa in Poplar Fruit's room and looked at him without making a fuss. Early the next morning, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie left their luggage at the hotel and took the little green train to Wingham Town. Under the guidance of Grandmother Monroe's daughter, they arrived at Grandmother Monroe's lakeside manor at noon. In fact, it couldn't be considered a manor in terms of scale. It was called a manor because Grandmother Monroe's garden-style courtyard was a little too big. Although it had snowed the day before, there were still many small yellow flowers blooming in the courtyard. It was like a sparse sea of flowers. It wasn't beautiful enough, but the lakeside still had a poetic and picturesque atmosphere. When Poplar Fruit and the others arrived, Grandmother Monroe was holding a book and sitting on a chair in front of the door reading. If it were summer, I'd be more inclined to choose that cedar tree to read. 10 years ago, there was a maple tree, but it was eaten by insects and has been cut down. Grandmother Monroe said to Poplar Fruit with a smile. When people got older, it was easy to talk about the past. Poplar Fruit accompanied Grandmother Monroe and chatted about this topic for almost half an hour. Zheng Yujie also said a few words. Her spoken English was not bad. Although she knew that Zheng Yujie was the boss of the publishing firm, Grandmother Monroe was surprised at her young age. She also jokingly asked if Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie were a couple. Poplar Fruit naturally flatly denied it, but Zheng Yujie only smiled and didn't answer. At noon, Grandmother Monroe invited Poplar Fruit and the others to eat together. Before that, Poplar Fruit handed the Swedish translation of Escape that he had translated to Grandmother Monroe. Grandmother Monroe passed it to her daughter and told her to take it to Professor Anderson and other friends in Sweden. I just want to say that China's Mo Yin is very lucky to have such an excellent translator like you. I've seen a few videos of you in Sweden. The English translation of your speech was excellent. Although I didn't understand the Swedish translation of the award ceremony, all the friends I know were full of praise for you. Minlo praised with a smile. Mr. Mo Yin is also my teacher. Poplar Fruit smiled. He raised the glass in his hand and said, "He's very accomplished in literature. Recently, I've been able to get inspiration and progress from him." Poplar Fruit didn't like others attributing Mo Yan's success to his translation. Poplar Fruit believed that his translation was merely a bridge that allowed foreign readers to come in contact with Mo Yan's works without any hindrance. However, the emotions they felt were ultimately because of Mo Yan's own works. Poplar Fruit couldn't possibly translate an ordinary book into an extravagant translation for no reason, right? If Poplar Fruit had that ability, why would he work so hard? He could have just written his own book and won the award himself. Zheng Yujie understood Poplar Fruit's meaning. However, she was a little scared because Grandmother Monroe was a client. Although Poplar Fruit didn't directly throw a tantrum, he was suspected of talking back. Zheng Yujie was worried that Grandmother Monroe would be unhappy and leave. If this happened in China, Poplar Fruit's trip would definitely be ruined. However, foreign people didn't think that talking back was offensive. Instead, Grandmother Monroe admired Poplar Fruit's sincere attitude. This admiration was even revealed in her eyes. It's really hard to imagine. Grandmother Monroe smiled. When I first met you on the plane, you were still a slightly famous model. The model was only invited by a friend to make a cameo appearance. Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled at Grandmother Monroe. I prefer my current job as a translator. I also enjoy learning from great writers like you during the translation process. After lunch, Grandmother Monroe and Poplar Fruit, who didn't have the habit of taking afternoon naps, entered the final stage of the negotiation. Grandmother Monroe took the contract sample from Zheng Yujie and put it aside. She smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "No matter what the Nobel Prize in Literature selection is, I'm willing to give you the rights to the Chinese version of my works that haven't been sold yet. As for the price," Grandmother Monroe waved her hand and said, "I don't ask for much. As long as you give me the market price, that's enough." Zheng Yujie looked at her in surprise and asked, "Really?" Grandmother Monroe didn't answer directly. She spoke as if she was telling a story. "Before you, there were 2 Chinese publishers who came to me. They both wanted the rights to the Chinese version of Dear Life." Grandmother Monroe turned to look at Poplar Fruit. Her eyes were bright as she asked. The price they offered wasn't low. "Do you know why I didn't agree?" Poplar Fruit shook his head. "Because they didn't have the ability to convince me." Grandmother Monroe sighed and said, "In 2003, my book, Who Do You Think You Are? It was published by your Dongxin Publishing House, a huge publishing group in China." Dongxin Publishing. Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The response was very low. Grandmother Monroe shook her head and said, "I have friends who are scholars in China. They told me that the translation was terrible." She didn't make any further comments. This book had won Monroe the Man Booker Literary Prize, the highest award in the contemporary English novel field in the last century. No wonder Grandmother Monroe was so disappointed. "So after that, I didn't sell the Chinese version of my works. Now I just want to give my works to a good translator who understands my works." Grandmother Monroe looked at Poplar Fruit and said with certainty, "If it was the Chinese version, New Translation Road Publishing House would get more than 10 of Grandmother Monroe's works, including one of her novels and nearly 10 of her short story collections that hadn't been sold yet." This was a harvest that Poplar Fruit didn't expect before they came. Originally, Poplar Fruit only wanted the book, Dear Life. Poplar Fruit was already preparing to express his gratitude to Grandmother Monroe when Zheng Yujie suddenly leaned forward and said, "Mrs. Monroe, actually, you can also consider giving us the foreign language copyright of your works. I believe you know that Mr. M.O. Yan's novels have been translated into more than 10 languages and are best-selling all over the world. This is all thanks to our publishing house." It seemed greedy, but Zheng Yujie wasn't. She wanted to fight for more opportunities for development for New Translation Road Publishing House. With just Mo Yan's works and online novels, the development of New Translation Road Publishing House would be greatly limited. If they wanted to grow into a giant that could compete with Dongxin Publishing, New Translation Road Publishing House had to increase their business diversity. "It's not a problem to leave it all to you." Grandmother Monroe was old, but she was still in good spirits. She smiled slyly and said, "But why not do the same as Mr. Mo Yan? Let's set a premise, which is to wait until I win the Nobel Prize in Literature." Chapter 943. The discussion with Menlo went surprisingly smoothly. Grandma Menlo didn't make things difficult for Poplar Fruit and the rest. She only made one request, which was that all the Chinese copyrights could only be translated by Poplar Fruit. Moreover, this had to be done after Poplar Fruit helped her translate the 2 short story collections into Swedish. As for the other foreign copyrights that were still in her hands, other than the English and Chinese ones, Menlo also planned to hand them over to New Translation Road Publishing House. However, just like her previous joke, the premise was that she could win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Poplar Fruit and the rest didn't have much hope for the foreign copyrights. That was for sure. What was a Nobel Prize in literature? Was it something that they could get just by thinking about it? There was only one mo yen in China after so many years. Poplar Fruit and the rest took Grandma Menlo's words as a joke or a tactful rejection. However, Poplar Fruit and the rest were already very satisfied. A total of 12 book copyrights. On the train ride back, Zheng Yujie hugged the contract she had signed with Monroe tightly and couldn't stop giggling happily. Poplar Fruit looked at her in amusement and said, "Are you exaggerating? It's not like you haven't seen so many books before. Previously, you spent hundreds of millions to buy the foreign language copyrights of more than 300,000 online novels, but I didn't see you this excited. How can it be the same?" Zheng Yujie raised her head and said disdainfully, "The quality of those 300,000 novels was uneven, and more than half of them couldn't be translated and published. Our books, on the other hand, are the ones that can see the real profits. I didn't think that someone would screw up Menlo's books and benefit us for nothing." Zheng Yujie said proudly, "The contemporary short story master. She's someone who has proven herself." Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "Another dozen books for me to translate. Looks like I'll have to spend all my time on this year." No. Zheng Yujie shook her head and smiled. "You don't have to work so hard. We don't have to release so many books at once like before. We have to release them one by one to give our marketing department enough space to operate. Mo Yan's book is an exception." Zheng Yujie smiled and said, "Who asked him to suddenly win a Nobel Prize in literature?" Poplar Fruit suddenly understood. He nodded and knew how to arrange his work sequence. "It's just a pity that we can't get the copyright for Menlo's other foreign languages," Zheng Yujie said regretfully. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "All right, don't be too greedy. It's enough to have so many Chinese version rights. Any more, and I'll die from exhaustion. You have to know that there are only cows that die of exhaustion, but there is no land that is ruined by plowing." The first part was nothing, but the unintentional words at the end stunned Zheng Yujie. Poplar Fruit also realized that he had used the wrong words. He was too embarrassed to correct himself, but when he raised his head to look at Zheng Yujie, he saw her blushing. Zheng Yujie was rarely this shy. With Poplar Fruit's eyesight, he could see the burgundy blush on her ears. Different from Fong Bei, Zheng Yujie's current appearance had a mature charm. She was like a blooming rose, charming and soul-stirring. "Ahem, what are you thinking?" Poplar Fruit interrupted helplessly. Zheng Yujie's red phoenix eyes twitched. She snorted and said, "I'm willing. It's none of your business." Back at the hotel, Zheng Yujie went out for a while. Poplar Fruit stayed in the room to pack up the gifts he bought yesterday. The gifts for Fong Bei and Kiki were all packed in the suitcase. He held a single blue gift box in his hand and frowned in thought. This was a flat, square box about the thickness of a book. Poplar Fruit bought it yesterday, when Zheng Yujie wasn't paying attention. In the end, he put it aside. It wasn't until the evening when Fong Bei came back and knocked on his door to ask him to have dinner together that Poplar Fruit took the gift box and walked to the door. Opening the door, Poplar Fruit was stunned. Zheng Yujie, who was standing at the door, looked completely different. She cut off her shoulder-length hair that she grew last year and returned to her usual short hair, clean and neat. The fine short hair fell on her cheeks, outlining Zheng Yujie's oval-shaped face even more beautiful. Without the cover of her long hair, the wide V-shaped woolen sweater revealed her delicate collarbone. Poplar Fruit was in a trance. It was as if he had returned to the moment when he first met Zheng Yujie. The swift and decisive girl who dared to love and hate seemed to have returned. Shaking his head, Poplar Fruit's eyes became clear again. He smiled and asked, "Why did you cut your hair again?" "Because I found out that you're not that obsessed with long hair." Zheng Yujie said with a burning gaze, "I still like my short hair. Isn't it better?" Poplar Fruit laughed dryly, scratched his head, and said, "It's all pretty." Humph. Zheng Yujie was not satisfied with Poplar Fruit's answer. But Poplar Fruit's reaction was not bad at first sight. She did not make things difficult for Poplar Fruit and said, "Let's go down and eat." The lunch was too simple. "Now I'm starving." "Wait a minute." Poplar Fruit scratched his head, handed over the gift box in his right hand, and said, "This is for you." What is it? Zhang Yujia's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. She pretended not to care and took it. She looked at it over and over again and asked, "It's a gift between friends." Yanghua hesitated for a moment before saying. He would not say that it was because of his guilt of not being able to respond to Zhang Yujia's infatuation. He also did not dare to casually come up with a reason to make Zhang Yujia's imagination run wild. Zhang Yujia tore off the wrapping paper on the spot, opened the box, and took out the crystal lily wrapped in yellow cloth. There were no small engravings on it, but the words "for my best friend" were engraved in big letters. It was more or less imperfect, but Zhang Yujia already felt suffocated. In addition to the last birthday gift from Poplar Fruit, this was the second gift from Poplar Fruit, right? Surprise could no longer describe the happiness and joy in Zhang Yujia's heart at this moment. She turned her head, took 2 deep breaths, and said in a muffled voice, "Humph, I don't care." Even Poplar Fruit could see that she did not mean what she said. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly as he watched Zhang Yujia carefully put the crystal lily back into the box. Then, she turned her head and opened the door to her room. She carefully put it into her suitcase and wrapped it tightly with clothes, worried that it would be damaged during the journey. After a while, Zhang Yujia came out, swinging her fine short hair. She held her handbag and walked in high heels to Poplar Fruit. She raised her head and looked at Poplar Fruit as if nothing had happened and said, "Let's go." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and shook his head. He closed the door and followed behind Zhang Yujia. "I'm used to it, aren't I?" Chapter 944. The next day, they finally returned to Yangcheng. Fong Beibei came to pick up Poplar Fruit again, and Song Jiwen drove her here. "I want to sign up to learn how to drive." Fong Beibei pouted and said to Poplar Fruit, "If you don't know how to drive, you always have to trouble others." Lowering his head to kiss Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit nodded with a smile and said, "Okay, when you learn how to drive, we'll go pick a car that you like." "Kiki." Poplar Fruit reached out his hand and drew a line on Kiki's little face and said with a smile, "Why didn't you call me Daddy?" The little fellow was angry. She crossed her hands in front of her chest, and no one knew who she learned this from, but she angrily turned around and looked at her father and said, "Kiki doesn't like Papa anymore." "Why?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Because Papa doesn't take Kiki out to play." Kiki pouted her little mouth and said angrily, "Because Papa went out for work." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Moreover, before Papa left, didn't he ask you if you wanted to go with Papa? Didn't Kiki tell Papa that you're going to stay at home with Sister Bebe? But Papa said that he's only going out for 2 days, but Papa went out for 3 days. He didn't come back yesterday." The little fellow complained. 2 days is just an empty number," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "How could Kiki understand what you're talking about?" Fong Beibei complained and pushed Poplar Fruit and said, "If you did something wrong, quickly apologize. Don't quibble." "Okay." Poplar Fruit raised his hand with a smile and said, "Kiki, Dad was wrong. Dad shouldn't break his promise." Kiki nodded and said in a childish voice, Then Kiki will forgive Papa." "Good girl." Poplar Fruit smiled. He hugged Kiki and kissed her on the cheek. The little girl finally turned from gloomy to sunny. She hugged her father's neck and giggled. At this moment, Fong Beibei found Zhang Yujia, who was standing quietly at the back. She mustered up her courage and asked, "Sister Yujia, how are you going back? Do you want to take our car?" Zhang Yujia looked at Fong Beibei's immature face, smiled, and said, "No, I'll ask my assistant to pick me up." Thanks to Poplar Fruit, everything went smoothly in Jia country. "Let's go," Poplar Fruit said to Fong Beibei, who was still looking at Zhang Yujia's back, with one hand holding Kiki and the other pulling the suitcase and holding Fong Beibei's waist. In the end, Zhang Yujia was the biggest threat. Although Fong Beibei had been mentally prepared, she still couldn't help but feel worried and scared every time she met her. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit made her feel at ease every time. We got the Chinese translation rights for 11 of Monroe's works. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei said excitedly, "You can't imagine who we got it from." "Who is it?" Fong Beibei asked with interest. Don't tell me it's your previous publishing house. Song Jiwin interrupted without any sense of propriety. Yes, it's Dongxin Publishing. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, although we don't have any grudges, and strictly speaking, we didn't get it from them. Even without us, they wouldn't have had a chance. But it's still a little exciting. When the car arrived at the teacher's apartment, Poplar Fruit handed Song Jiwin 2 bottles of maple syrup and a few boxes of maple sugar cookies. These specialties were all checked in, and Song Jiwin wanted to share them with Chun Amlin and his godparents. When they got home, the loyal Goldie came to greet them. However, Kiki, who used to play with Goldie, stuck to her father. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but it felt like 3 years. If you don't let go of me, how can I get you a present? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Hearing this, Kiki immediately slipped down from her father's body. She jumped on the ground and shouted, present, present, present. Kiki wants a present. Fong Beibei also looked at Poplar Fruit with a smile. She pulled Kiki's hand and shouted, present, present. Take it slow. Everyone has a present. Poplar Fruit laughed and said. Poplar Fruit had just opened the suitcase full of presents when Kiki, who had sharp eyes, immediately found the box of her favorite Barbie doll. The little girl screamed and jumped up excitedly. This Barbie doll is called Annie. Poplar Fruit smiled and hugged Kiki. He let the little girl hold the box and said, it's a teacher. Then Kiki wants Annie to teach Kara, Monica, and Kiki. Kiki said happily. The other 3 were bought by Poplar Fruit for her before, and they were different every time. What about me? Fong Beibei blinked her big eyes and looked at Poplar Fruit expectantly. Poplar Fruit searched in the suitcase for a long time, deliberately whetting Fong Beibei's appetite. Just as she was about to get anxious, he suddenly took out a long transparent plastic box and handed it to Fong Beibei. What's this? Fong Beibei looked at it and asked in surprise, cookies. All natural, pure handmade, maple sugar cookies. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, I made them myself. You're the first person in the world who's going to taste this cookie other than me. Even Zheng Yuji didn't taste it. Zheng Yuji ate the pancakes made by Poplar Fruit. Really? Fong Beibei was like Kiki. She held the cookie in her arms happily, as if she was holding a rare treasure. There was nothing rare about the cookie. It was precious because it was made by Poplar Fruit himself. However, it was impossible to be the only one in the world who ate. It was even difficult to be the first, because there was Kiki. When a little girl heard the conversation between her father and Sister Beibei, she immediately stuffed the Barbie doll box in her father's hand and stood up. Before she could stand firm, she fell into Fong Beibei's arms, raised her hand and shouted, Kiki wants to eat too. Fong Beibei couldn't help it. She couldn't stand Kiki's pestering. She could only open the box and give one to Kiki. She hadn't even started eating yet. Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit with some sadness and pouted her mouth. There was no need to ask. The little girl was eating the cookie crumbs, her eyes were shining, and she was very intoxicated. The maple sugar was sweet. Of course, she liked it. Poplar Fruit looked at his girlfriend and smiled. He moved over, took one out of the box, and handed it to Fong Beibei. She took a bite. Why didn't you eat it just now? Poplar Fruit asked softly. I can't bear to eat it. Fong Beibei muttered. Idiot, I'll make more for you after eating it. Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched her nose. Actually, I brought you other gifts. Poplar Fruit leaned over to Fong Beibei's ear and said softly, when we get to Macau, I'll give it to you on your birthday. Fong Beibei ate the cookie, her eyes sparkling and full of affection. It was as intoxicating as the sunset outside the window. Chapter 945. After returning to Guangzhou, Poplar Fruit gave the students a basic Swedish class for the week. Early the next morning, he went to Macau with Fong Beibei and a happy Kiki. Although the seminar would only start on the 4th, that did not stop Poplar Fruit and the rest from going there a few days in advance. At the same time, at Cheongju International Airport in South Korea, a plane slowly took off. Its destination was also Macau, where Poplar Fruit and the rest were going to stay for the next week. Due to the plot, It was postponed for a month. Poplar Fruit, of course, did not know about any of this. To him, the main purpose of coming to the casino was to spend a happy birthday with Fong Beibei, Fong Beibei's 20th birthday. Secondly, it was the spring outing with the whole family. The serious seminar was placed last by Poplar Fruit. He wondered if Chun Zongdai would beat him to death if he knew about it. Of course, Poplar Fruit going to Macau to attend the seminar would definitely miss the public elective translation theory and practice class on Monday. Luckily, the school had coordinated with the students. They adjusted the class to Friday before the basic Swedish class. Beauty, congratulations, you have a super versatile boyfriend who can act as a tour guide, translator, and coolie. Yang was said to Fong Beibei with a smile after they got on the casino shuttle. Fong Beibei glared at Poplar Fruit and said unhappily, "All right, you make it sound like you're the only one who's been here before. It's not like I've never been to Macau before. It was my sister who brought me here." "Of course it's different," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Tell me, who else can be as good as your boyfriend and accurately remember the timetables of every casino? I know you're good, okay?" Fong Beibei said helplessly. She hugged Poplar Fruit's arm, leaned her head on Poplar Fruit's body, rubbed it, and said softly, "Let's hurry to the hotel, I'm starving. I told you to eat 2 more buns this morning, but you didn't eat them. You keep saying that you want to lose weight." In the end, Yangwood didn't say this out loud. He reached out his hand to hold his girlfriend's face, patted it, and said, "Are you hungry? Why don't we ask the driver to stop first? It will take at least half an hour to get there." Fong Beibei shook her head and said, "No, I'll take a nap. We'll be there soon." Fong Beibei was a little tired because she woke up too early. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, had only woken up when the little fellow had passed the test. She was currently hugging her milk bottle and drinking her breakfast milk. She was looking at the West Bay Bridge outside the car window in high spirits as it passed through the sparkling sea surface like a silver ribbon. It took a while for Poplar Fruit and the others to arrive at the Golden Sand Casino. After getting out of the car, Fong Beibei was too hungry to have any strength, so she could only pull Kiki aside. Poplar Fruit took care of 2 suitcases and a medium-sized travel bag. "Aren't we staying at the Sheraton Hotel?" Fong Beibei looked left and right and asked. "Yes, it's across the street," Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "but let's eat something at the Golden Sand Casino first." "Casino? Will there be anything to eat?" Fong Beibei was now like a little wife, holding Kiki's little hand and following Poplar Fruit step by step. "It won't only be fast food like McDonald's, right? I don't want to come to Macau to eat these. I want to eat Portuguese tarts and pork chop buns. Kiki is full. I don't want to eat." Kiki waved her hand, patted her stomach gently, and said she didn't know if she didn't want to bring trouble to her father or just wanted to interrupt. It was estimated that the latter was more likely. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Don't worry, as long as you have money, there is delicious food everywhere." They found a Western restaurant in the Golden Sand Casino that had just opened. Of course, it was also the expensive kind. Poplar Fruit took Fong Beibei in and sat by the window to eat breakfast, tomato meat sauce spaghetti, French muffins, and fruit salad. "It's so expensive. It may not cost so much to eat at home for a month." After eating, they walked out of the Western restaurant. Fong Beibei was still distressed about the bill of more than 800 Australian dollars. "It doesn't matter. We're traveling, so don't worry too much about these details." Poplar Fruit smiled and hugged Fong Beibei's shoulder. He smiled and said, "You're not hungry, and Kiki is eating happily. That's good, right? Kiki, is the fruit salad delicious?" Kiki immediately stopped, turned around, and looked up at her father with bright eyes. She nodded vigorously and said, "It's delicious. It was expensive, but the chefs in these Western restaurants were good, and the ingredients were fresh and high-end. Every dish tasted great." Fong Beibei was no longer entangled. She and Kiki stood aside, waiting for Poplar Fruit to bring their luggage back from the storage. Uncle. Poplar Fruit just turned around and saw Fong Beibei excitedly waving at him. Bao, what's wrong?" Yang was slowly walked over and asked. It didn't seem like a big deal. "Uncle, look, Fong Bei excitedly pointed to the artificial pool in front of the rockery and shouted, "Running underscore man." "Where?" Poplar Fruit turned his head in confusion and looked in the direction Fong Bei pointed. He saw it. Above the rockery, there was a constantly sliding screen with the words, "Welcome running underscore man," written in English and Korean. "Is it? Am I seeing things?" Fong Bei excitedly patted Poplar Fruit's arm and said, although she did not understand Korean, she could still understand such simple English. "Yes." Poplar Fruit smiled. "Where are they?" Fong Bei excitedly looked around, but to her disappointment, the surroundings were too quiet, just like usual. Other than a few tourists, the newly opened shop did not have the lively atmosphere that Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei were looking forward to. Maybe they're not here yet, or maybe they left a long time ago. Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled. "What do you plan to do? Are we going to wait here?" Fong Bei was a fan of Korean variety shows and dramas. Poplar Fruit often let her watch dramas on his iPad, and Poplar Fruit had to make time to watch them with her at night. However, Fong Bei was more sensible. She shook her head and said regretfully, "Forget it. Maybe they've already left. Let's go back to the hotel. We can't delay the original plan because of me." "What are you talking about?" Poplar Fruit ruffled Fong Bei's hair and smiled. "We're a family on vacation. Can we go anywhere? We don't have to follow the itinerary. If you want to continue waiting for the 7 people to appear, Kiki and I are fine with it. We can just walk around here today." No. Fong Bei shook her head and smiled. "I just want to see them. I'm not a crazy fan. Let's go. Bring me out a play." Chapter 946. The Grand Venetian Hotel is across the street. Don't you want to go there? After unpacking their equipment in the hotel, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei could finally travel comfortably. "No, there's nothing to see during the day. Let's wait until we come back in the evening. At that time, we can still take an indoor boat." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Let's go to Fisherman's Wharf first." They still took the casino's shuttle bus. The shuttle bus was really a major feature of Macau. They didn't need to take buses or taxis. They could easily reach any of the wonderful attractions they wanted to go to. However, when they arrived at Fisherman's Wharf, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei both felt that the atmosphere was a bit wrong. Why are there so many people there? Fong Bei looked at the crowd on the main road in confusion and asked with some confusion, "Could it be that some big shot is coming? However, there's so many young students. It feels like there are more celebrities coming." Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He naturally wouldn't be narcissistic enough to think that the people across the street were waiting for him. However, Poplar Fruit suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said, "Could it be that running underscore man is coming?" "Really?" Fong Bei was so happy that she wanted to look around. Although she said that she didn't chase after celebrities, if she saw an idol, it would be great to ask for an autograph. They shouldn't be here yet. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a scene now. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It could be imagined that when those celebrities came, the audience would definitely be boiling. "Look, isn't there our flag there?" Poplar Fruit had sharp eyes. He glanced at the flag behind the staff and said, "It hasn't been raised yet. Aren't they standing there holding it up on TV and waiting for them to come? Maybe it's still at the previous venue." "I see." Fong Bei asked, "What should we do?" There was no chance just now, but now the opportunity was close at hand. "They'll still be here for the mission," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Don't worry, they'll definitely come back later. However, let's take a stroll around this area first. Fisherman's Wharf is so beautiful. It's not a good idea to just waste time here. What if we miss it?" Fong Bei asked reluctantly. "What a pity. I won't miss it," Poplar Fruit said confidently. "When we hear someone screaming later, it'll be them. However, we still have to avoid the crowd. I'm afraid that Kiki will be squeezed." Kiki had been in her father's arms, looking left and right. When she heard her father calling her, she turned her head with a puzzled expression. Poplar Fruit and the others started to stroll around Fisherman's Wharf like real tourists. They even went as far as the shrunken Colosseum before returning. After playing for so long, they did not hear the arrival of Running Man. The reason why they did not continue sightseeing was mainly because the sun was starting to get a little hot. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei went to a cafe near the sea. They ordered some drinks, and the whole family sat in the booth on the promenade by the sea to rest. The booth here was very comfortable, as if there was a separate pavilion with an open awning above, 2 rattan chairs, and a smooth glass table across from each other. Close to the sea, they could enjoy the sea breeze and enjoy the quiet sea and a long bridge in the distance. The bench was just enough for Poplar Fruit, 2 adults, and 1 child to sit together. Even if the opposite seat was empty, they did not have to separate. After sitting quietly for a while, Fong Bei looked at the stone steps where the waves were lapping. She was almost sleepy. At this time, there was finally a burst of noise in the distance. Needless to say, they were here. Turning around, they saw that not only in the distance, but also in the nearby area, many staff members carrying cameras had jumped out. They were scattered in every corner, ready to shoot the next program in all directions. Do you want to go over and take a look? Poplar Fruit turned around and asked Fong Bei with a smile. Because Kiki had already seized her father's embrace, Fong Bei stretched lazily, grabbed Poplar Fruit's shoulder, and whispered, "Forget it. I'm too lazy to go over. They will come over later, right?" "They should." Poplar Fruit nodded with a smile and said, "Look, there are so many cameras nearby. There must be a mission here." Fong Bei also poked her head out with interest and secretly observed. "Hey, Uncle, look." Fong Bei seemed to have found something and pointed at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit turned his head and saw a figure hiding under the bushes. He looked at Fong Bei thoughtfully. "Hey, we found the key person of the mission." Fong Bei smiled and pulled Poplar Fruit's hand, saying, "Shall we go and tear her apart?" "Haha, you are really evil." Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile. The two of them were just talking. Naturally, they would not rashly disturb other people's filming. At this time, Kiki pulled her father's hand and asked him to lower his head to listen to her. Only Fong Bei still poked her head out and looked into the distance with interest. I saw Zhou Yi's couple." Fong Bei happily patted Poplar Fruit's hand and shouted, "Jiang Gary and Song Ji Xiao." However, the two of them turned into the jewelry store next to them, which made Fong Bei feel a little regretful. She said gloomily, "I like them so much. It's a pity that they are not together. They should be in the same group, right?" Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Wait a while. When they come out, we can ask them for their autographs." Fong Bei kept staring at the jewelry store, but Zhou Yi's couple did not come out. Suddenly, a familiar Korean voice from the video rang out next to them. Fong Bei did not understand. She turned her head in confusion and saw Lu Zaishi and Haha standing on the right in front of them, bending over and looking at them. At this time, they were surrounded by several cameramen. Isn't this? Fong Bei did not understand, but Poplar Fruit did. He looked up and saw Lu Zaishi and Haha clapping their hands. The two of them were excited as if they had discovered the new world. "It's him, it must be him. I recognize him. That's right. His advertisement is still hanging on the bus in Seoul. Such a famous person. He must have been invited by the program team." "What do you mean?" Poplar Fruit was a little confused. He looked at Lu Zaishi and the others. Although they were celebrities and idols in the hearts of ordinary people, why would they look at them like that? "Ani Aosai." Lu Zaishi nodded excitedly and bent over. He asked uncertainly, "Are you Leon?" "Huh? What's going on?" Poplar Fruit was a little confused. Fong Bei looked at Lu Zaishi excitedly, but she did not understand what Lu Zaishi was saying at all. "Speak English, speak English." Haha anxiously pulled Lu Zaishi and said, "This is Macau." Oh. Lu Zaishi exaggeratedly patted his forehead in front of the camera next to him, looking very regretful. Then he began to ask in an awkward accent, Are you Leon?" Chapter 9:47. Poplar Fruit usually used the name Leon overseas. Even in news reports, they rarely quoted Poplar Fruit's Chinese name directly. At most, they used Leon Yang and added his surname. However, after hearing the conversation between Lu Zaishi and Haha, Poplar Fruit knew that they recognized him. It was not hard to understand. Didn't Givenchy still use the commercials he filmed before? Didn't Song Chien say that Poplar Fruit commercials were everywhere in South Korea? However, Poplar Fruit did not expect that Lu Zaishi and the rest would remember him. Hey, Poplar Fruit stood up with a smile. He bent down slightly and took Lu Zaishi's hand. He said in Mandarin, "Brother Zaishi, I can understand Korean." Oh, Haha and Lu Zaishi looked at each other in surprise. They grabbed each other's hands and felt the excitement of meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Poplar Fruit and Running_Man did not expect this part. After it was broadcasted in South Korea, it led to a discussion about whether or not Poplar Fruit was a Korean. Of course, this discussion was severely rebutted by Chinese netizens. Haha, you're overthinking it. Leon Yang, you speak Korean very, very well. Haha said excitedly. Lu Zaishi asked in surprise, Leon Yang, how do you know us? Even though you're busy, you still pay attention to our show? Lu Zaishi was Lu Zaishi after all. Even if he could not pretend to be close to Poplar Fruit, he could still grasp the main point of the topic. Poplar Fruit was considered an international celebrity. To be able to attract the attention of a foreign celebrity, not only the production team, but also the South Korean audience would definitely feel honored. Brother Haha, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, yes, I like Running_Man very much. My girlfriend likes it even more. Let me introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Fong Bei, and this is my daughter, Kiki. Fong Bei had already suppressed her excited little heart and stood up behind Poplar Fruit. Kiki also stood on the chair and pressed on the table. She curiously peeked her head out. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki and made way for Fong Bei. Any Osai has it. Fong Bei stuttered in Korean. My name is Fong Bei. I like your show. Of course, apart from the greeting, Fong Bei was speaking Mandarin. Yanghua smiled and helped to explain. She said that she really likes watching your show. My girlfriend is a loyal fan of yours. Oh, what an honor. Lu Zaishi and the rest did not have the modesty of celebrities. They also bowed and shook hands with Fong Bei and smiled. Although these Korean MCs and celebrities were not as famous as those idols, singers, and movie stars, they did not put on airs with their fans at all. This was something that Poplar Fruit had always admired. Kiki did not understand Korean. The only thing she knew was goodbye. This was taught to Kiki by the Korean exchange student they met on the plane to Beijing at the beginning of last year. Therefore, Kiki could only look at them and their surroundings curiously. Kiki is so cute. Haha, who also had children about the same age as Kiki, felt fatherly love in his heart. He kept making cute gestures at Kiki. Although they did not speak the same language, Kiki was still amused by Haha's strange gestures. The little girl turned her head, patted her father's shoulder, and giggled nonstop. The scene of Kiki laughing brightly was loved by many viewers all over the world after this episode of Running_Man was broadcasted. Later, under the omnipotent netizen search, they even found evidence that Kiki and Beckham's little seventh princess were good friends. But this was all in the future. Finally, Lu Zaishi and the rest remembered their mission. They could roughly guess that Poplar Fruit was not invited by the production team. The production team had never invited a guest and let the guest bring his or her family along. However, for the sake of the show's continuity and topicality, Lu Zaishi and the rest still pretended to ask, Leon, we are on a mission. Do you have the key? Poplar Fruit deliberately turned his head and asked Fong Bei. They asked if we have the key. Yes. Fong Bei foolishly followed Poplar Fruit. She opened her carry-on bag, took out Poplar Fruit's room key, and handed it over. Of course, the mission that Lu Zaishi and the rest were going to do definitely did not require a key like Poplar Fruit's. But Haha still took it and poked the keyhole of the small iron box in his left hand. The result was obvious. This was not right. Leon, Lu Zaishi took the key and glanced at the room number of the Sheraton Hotel on it. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, Isn't this your key? Poplar Fruit took it, held back his laughter, and handed it to Fong Bei. He then said, "Well, are you going to do this mission's key to open this box?" They nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Actually, we have a key clue." "Really?" Lu Zaishi and the rest were excited. Haha also pretended to turn her head and look around, afraid that someone would come and snatch it. "Really?" Poplar Fruit smiled, took out a book from Fong Bei's bag, and said, "But I have to trouble you to help me sign this for my girlfriend, then I can tell you." "No problem." Lu Zaishi breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the program group's mission, the cost of this mission was too low. Lu Zaishi and Haha signed their names respectively. "Leon, how did you happen to be here?" Lu Zaishi asked as he signed. "Is there a show in Macau?" Poplar Fruit shook his head and said with a smile, "No, I'm not a model anymore. I came to Macau because there's a translation seminar next week, so I brought my girlfriend and daughter here in advance." After getting Haha's signature, Lu Zaishi excitedly took out his mobile phone and said, "Leon, come, let's take a photo together. I want to send an SNS to tell everyone that I met you." Poplar Fruit also took the SLR camera from Fong Bei and handed it to his personal photographer Quan Lai with Lu Zaishi. He smiled and said, "Brother Quan Lai, please take a photo for me too." Oh, Poplar Fruit also knows Quan Lai's name. "Quan Lai, you are really famous." Lu Zaishi took the opportunity to tease Quan Lai. Fong Bei was the happiest. Poplar Fruit put his arm around her and let her stand in the middle. He stood behind with Kiki in his arms, while Lu Zaishi and Haha stood on each side. They took several photos before reluctantly ending it. "Okay, Poplar Fruit should tell Lu Zaishi and the rest about the clues." "Brother Zaishi, Brother Haha, look over there, someone is hiding there." Yang will put her hand on their shoulders and pointed to a petite figure 50 meters away. She was hiding under the bushes with her, but sticking out. "There must be something fishy about this. You will know the result when you catch her." Okay. Lu Zaishi and the others were also old foxes. When they saw the photographer secretly following the person nearby, they quickly thanked and said goodbye to Poplar Fruit and chased after her in a hurry. Poplar Fruit turned his head and saw Fong Bei holding a notebook and a camera with a happy look on her face. "Is it necessary to be so exaggerated?" Poplar Fruit smiled and rubbed Fong Bei's head and said, "This trip to Macau is worth it, right? If we meet running_man, who knows, we might even appear on screen." Chapter 948. Early in the morning, Fong Bei's surprise scream pierced through the sky of the Sheraton Hotel. "Uncle, how did you get so many autographs?" Gary Jiang, Song Jixiao, Jin Zhonghua, Li Guangzhu, Pond Rock Town. Lu Zaishi and Haha also have autographs, and more, and Han Huijin and Li Dongxiu. "I'm not familiar with these two." Fong Bei put the autographs aside. She held the stack of autographs in her hands and sat on the bed. She raised her head and asked Poplar Fruit curiously, "How did you get so many?" "After you fell asleep yesterday, they came to find me." Poplar Fruit laughed. It turned out that after Lu Zaishi and Haha went back, they told everyone about their encounter with Poplar Fruit. They were all very surprised, but because they were recording the show, they did not have time to be distracted. Very late at night at Golden Sands Casino, they finished recording the last segment and found out that the hotel they stayed in was the Sheraton Hotel. This reminded Lu Zaishi of the room key that Poplar Fruit handed to him. Therefore, they found a room number of Poplar Fruit based on the recorded video and found the door. "Why didn't you wake me up?" Fong Bei complained. "You were already asleep. How could I bear to wake you up?" Yang Gua smiled and reached out to help Fong Bei, who had just woken up, brush away a strand of hair that naughtily ran to her forehead. "Later, I found out that in addition to Li Guangzhu, Li Dongxiu was also a model, so after a short chat, I also helped you get an autograph." "Are they still there now?" Fong Bei asked expectantly. "Not anymore." Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "I heard that they were leaving for Thailand early in the morning. They should be on the plane now." "Okay, I want to get up, brush my teeth, and wash my face. After a good night's sleep, I'm full of energy again. Let's continue to go out and play today." Fong Beibei did not feel regretful. She smiled brightly, stretched, and lifted the quilt. Speaking of fun, there's a good place to choose. Yang will laugh. Macau Tower. I heard from Brother Sure that they went out to have fun while they were doing a mission yesterday. Song Jixiao even went bungee jumping. Song Jixiao was famous among the running men for being bold and not afraid of heights. Even Jin Zhonghua, who had the strongest muscles, could not compare to her boldness. Poplar Fruit's eyes sparkled when he talked about their bungee jumping. He really wanted to try it out. Really? I really want to play too. I've been on roller coasters and vertical lifts before, but I've never done bungee jumping. Fong Beibei's eyes also revealed a trace of desire. She grabbed Poplar Fruit's hand and looked at Poplar Fruit with some excitement. Fong Beibei was usually not brave, but after all, she was a young person who had not yet reached the age of 20. She had a playful and adventurous heart. As for Poplar Fruit, this guy was a bold guy before he practiced kung fu. When he was young, he climbed coconut trees with his bare hands. Now that he was skilled, he was even bolder. He even dared to climb out of the window without any protective equipment. He climbed at the height of 17 floors like Spider-Man. Yes, we can also jump together. Poplar Fruit laughed. But let's go bungee jumping. Fong Beibei was also eager, but she thought of a very realistic problem. What about Kiki? This was indeed a problem. Poplar Fruit turned to look at Kiki, who was still sleeping, and said, "How about this? Let's go shopping first. When it's almost noon, we'll go to Macau Tower. When Kiki falls asleep, we'll ask the staff to help take care of her, and then we'll go play." So, today, Poplar Fruit's trip often appeared this scene. Kiki, if you're sleepy, you can sleep in Papa's arms. Poplar Fruit hugged Kiki and patted her back gently. Kiki is not sleepy. Kiki giggled, thinking that her father was playing with her. Instead, she grabbed her father's ear energetically and cried, "Kiki wants to play with Papa." Poplar Fruit had no choice but to continue to wander around Macau with Fong Beibei and Kiki. Then, like yesterday, they found a restaurant near Macau Tower to rest until it was almost 2 o'clock at noon. After eating lunch and drinking milk, Kiki finally couldn't resist her pajamas and slowly fell asleep. Poplar Fruit smiled, took Fong Beibei's hand, and went straight to Macau Tower. It seemed that because the Running Man crew had been here yesterday, there were a lot of people in Macau Tower today. Many young couples came to Macau Tower to look at the large posters that had been developed overnight. They were all taken by the staff during the filming yesterday. One of them was Song Jixiao jumping bungee jumping and laughing excitedly in midair, which attracted many tourists. Song Jixiao was the kind of real, mature, and natural beauty who was not eye-catching at first glance, but became more and more beautiful the more you looked at her. Moreover, her temperament was also very likable, which was rare in South Korea. "We want to play this," Fong Beibei said as she bit Poplar Fruit's ear. Poplar Fruit lowered his head and nodded in agreement. They took the elevator up to the sightseeing floor 223 meters above the ground. Here, tourists were still bustling, but there were not many people near the bungee jumping platform. After all, there were still very few people in this world who liked extreme sports. Looking down from the sightseeing floor, the people on the ground could not be seen clearly. The houses and cars looked like tiny ants. Just imagine, falling from such a high place. Even if there was a protective device, it would still make one's adrenaline rush. Not to mention the tourists on the sightseeing floor who were afraid of heights and felt weak in the knees. Therefore, when Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei excitedly bought bungee jumping tickets, the surrounding tourists looked at them with a tragic gaze, some with admiration and some with worry. Kiki, who was sleeping, was being taken care of by a female staff member. When Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei came back from downstairs, they would take the little girl back. Xiao Han knew that this was not reasonable, but please believe that it was possible for the time being. Because it was a couple's ticket, after Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei put on protective clothing, the staff member used an iron buckle to fasten Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei together. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's fingers were interlocked. He lowered his head and smiled warmly at Fong Beibei, who was looking up. The tourists behind a protective line were envious and jealous. They all sighed and said, "What a good match, but showing affection is too torturous." Ignoring other people's comments, Poplar Fruit said gently, "Come on." Fong Beibei also nodded. The two of them held hands and walked together to the walkway leading to the gangplank. As soon as they walked out, they felt the biting cold wind outside. Fong Beibei's hair was blown up, and she quickly tied it up with a hairband on her wrist. First of all, the guide loudly told Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei some things to pay attention to. Poplar Fruit listened, but Fong Beibei held Poplar Fruit's hand tightly. She was a little scared. Chapter 949. Although Running_Man and his crew had just finished filming in Macau and had flown to Thailand for the filming of the next attraction, the crazy fans, as well as some attractions or businessmen who could not wait to make a fortune from their fans, had already leaked the photos and videos they had taken on the internet. What everyone enjoyed the most was the photo of Song Ji-xiao giving a thumbs up in surprise while hanging in midair after jumping bungee jumping. This female star, who had the spirit of a tough girl and the feelings of a soft girl, once again won people's praise for her unpretentious performance. Spoiler, guests had always been something that fans liked to do. Not only the fans in South Korea, but the millions of Running_Man fans in China also started to study the fan posts on the Tieba forum as if they were playing a game of looking for trouble. They were guessing which Korean celebrities would appear on the forum. Han Huijin and Lee Dong-wook were quickly identified. After all, after they were found, they had been participating in the later segments and had a high appearance rate. It was not surprising that they were recognized by Korean fans. Just when everyone thought that they had found everyone, a forum user suddenly raised a post as if he had discovered a new continent. Do you know who he is? The first photo was not very clear, but could be seen that Liu Zaishi and Haha nodded and bent over to shake hands with Poplar Fruit. In the next few photos, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei came out of the private room. It could be seen that they were talking, but because it was taken with a mobile phone, the hands were shaking and the pixels were low, so their faces could not be seen clearly. There was one photo that was slightly clearer, but it was also covered by Kiki, who was in Poplar Fruit's arms. The original poster said, "He looks like a passerby, but he also doesn't look like a passerby. He even chatted with the guru for so long. He's definitely not a nobody. From afar, he definitely looks handsome. Look at those long legs. I'm about to cry because of how handsome he is. Can any friends in the know come out and identify him? He should be some oppa from South Korea. Who in our country can be so tall?" The original poster was probably a fan who had been following the Korean entertainment industry for a long time, but his words angered many people in the country. After all, no matter how good the outside world is, I won't allow anyone to say anything bad about our country. The OP suffered a lot of criticism, but it also made these photos available to more people. Isn't this Kiki? There would always be fans of Kiki and Poplar Fruit who saw them. They were so surprised that they brought out the photos of Kiki and Poplar Fruit in the Happy Base Camp to compare them. That's right. My daughter, who looked like she was carved out of jade, was Kiki. She had delicate features and was still as cute as ever. So, that tall man is Poplar Fruit? The most memorable thing about Poplar Fruit was the various slanderous rumors that he had encountered. There were even fans who thought that Poplar Fruit had been hit by these rumors and had been frozen by some unknown department or person. However, the most unforgettable thing about Poplar Fruit was his long legs, which were more than a meter long. Many of his female fans would drool at the sight of them. How could it be wrong? It's definitely Poplar Fruit. Many netizens have basically confirmed the identity of Poplar Fruit and fiercely attacked the OP who was laughing. Look, who said that there are no handsome, long-legged oppas in our country? Isn't Poplar Fruit one of them? The netizens were very proud of what they said. However, because the OP didn't appear for a long time, no one continued to make a fuss, and the floor began to slowly shift to another topic. If it's Poplar Fruit and Kiki, then the other woman should be the beautiful Fong Beibei. It's not certain whether it's her or not. By the way, why did they appear in Ouching? Did they receive an invitation from the Running_Man crew? Nonsense. Didn't Poplar Fruit say that he has quit the entertainment industry? Then it must be our Poplar Fruit Appa, who had no choice but to say it. He was ostracized in China, so he could only go abroad to develop his career. Nonsense. If running_man invited Poplar Fruit, why didn't I see him appear later? Hey, I have a photo from my friend's Weibo. It seems to be Poplar Fruit and the others bungee jumping. Can it prove that he also participated? When everyone began to study the blurry photo, conspiracy theories began to be rampant. Many netizens ran to Weibo, or add him on Weibo, or simply left a message under Poplar Fruit's Weibo to ask questions. He didn't expect that he would receive a response from Yonghua, a rare occurrence in 100 years. This was also because Poplar Fruit was in a good mood recently. When he was bored at night, he could look at Weibo. Ouching was not like everyone's usual situation. When they went there, they didn't dare to turn on their mobile phone data or make calls. As long as they had money, the mobile phone signal in Ouching was better and the Wi-Fi coverage was wider. Poplar Fruit was in a hotel room, and he could surf the internet through the hotel's wireless network. Seeing that some fans were quarreling on the internet, Poplar Fruit happily posted a Weibo announcement to everyone. Relax, this time I went to Ouching mainly to attend the translation seminar with my mentor. However, I took my girlfriend and daughter to Ouching for 2 days in advance. I actually met the running_man crew at Fisherman's Wharf. I'm so lucky, haha. Then his second Weibo was also posted, and it was still a picture Weibo. Poplar Fruit said, "My girlfriend is a loyal fan of running_man. She was very lucky to take a photo with Lu Zaishi and haha. She was very happy." Later, I heard that running_man went to the Tower of Macau, and we also went to experience bungee jumping the next day. Well, the following photos may be a bit of a public display of affection. Everyone be careful, haha. Poplar Fruit posted a total of 2 photos. One was a photo of them with Lu Zaishi and haha, and the other was a photo of Fong Beibei hanging on Poplar Fruit. The 2 of them were fully armed and were about to jump out of the Tower of Macau. After Poplar Fruit's 2 Weibo posts were posted, they went viral. The most commented on was the photo of him and Fong Beibei bungee jumping. Netizens said with jealousy that Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's public display of affection was too much. The female fans envied that Fong Beibei was pampered by such a handsome man like Poplar Fruit, while male fans lamented that Poplar Fruit was really a winner in life. He had a beautiful female top student as his girlfriend, the cute Kiki that everyone loved, and fame, status, and money. The conspiracy theory was broken by Poplar Fruit's clarification, but this matter was not over. Some online media, such as Tungsun News, used the photos posted by Poplar Fruit, and some photos dug up by netizens to hype up Poplar Fruit's matter again. Some media even dug up the translation seminar that Poplar Fruit was going to attend. Therefore, Poplar Fruit became popular again. There were even celebrities and reporters who privately lamented. Although Poplar Fruit is no longer in the entertainment industry, he still has a reputation that is not inferior to ordinary A-list celebrities. So what? Poplar Fruit still has to continue to be busy with his translation seminar work in Macau. How can he continue to pay attention to the changes in the domestic situation that you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel? We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.